Happened last night, in fact. You know, somebody stops me and says, listen every day.
I know,
it's the only
so
place.
lovely.
It's the only place. You get that as well. And it's fabulous.
It
and
really is.
It genuinely is.
They even like Benedict.
Even Benedict.
Not sure why.
Well, I mean, yeah, we all think that. Huge thanks to Benedict for joining me on my final show of the year. Huge thank you to you. The brilliant Ian Collins up next. Do enjoy. We've got Peter Cardwell and Alex Phillips covering on my show over the Christmas period. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Have a very, very Merry Christmas. I'll be back in the new year to see what 2025 holds for us. Good luck, everybody.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you to Julia, by the way, with a sack of festive plenty, but back in the new year. Stand by for all of that. Lots to come this afternoon. Elon Musk says, well, we understand he's ready to bankroll Nigel Farage and the Reform Party with a possible $100 million donation. Can he single-handedly overthrow Labour and the Tories to finally shake up British politics? Should this man even be allowed anywhere near British? But of course he shouldn't be. We all know that. But there is a sort of romantic inkling to go, yeah, but it's Elon, right? He's the good guy. He's the good billionaire. We'll come back to that in a couple of moments. Also this afternoon, once again, Labour backtracking on another promise. I mean, this is extraordinary. The Work and Pension Secretary, Liz Kendall, saying the government would not pay a single penny to the 3.8 million WASPy women who had to work longer to get their pension. That is fine. It's probably the right idea. However, in opposition, they argued emphatically that they would sort this one out. From Keir through to Ange, they all said, we've got your backs, WASPy girls. What a lot of old cobblers. And 3,500 police jobs could be cut after Rachel Reeves' tax grab threatens funding for cops. We'll have a look at that as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Every now and again, there's a subject that just really does hit the core, the bullseye of intrigue. And I think this Elon Musk one, at a number of levels. Bear in mind, this whole story would be very different if Elon Musk wasn't about to go and work in a senior position in the next American government. So bear that in mind as we walk through this. He's backing Reform UK. You could say that unequivocally. So whatever happens with Donald Trump, somebody in his inner circle actually publicly supports another party. You don't get that very often. You don't tend to hear people in government. You say what you like in opposition. You can say what you like if you're not a politician. But when you're in government, you tend not to sort of show your allegiances elsewhere. Particularly outside the government of the day. But he's back in Reform. He had open discussions as we broke that news yesterday on this programme. Nigel Farage about making a major donation to the party. Richard Tice, speaking with Julia a little earlier, said, look, you know, this 100 million thing, that's just a figure somebody came up with. But there'll be money going in the direction of reform from the tech billionaire. They met at Trump's Florida club at the start of the week. The issue of money was discussed. Mr. Farage, he's the reform leader for the uninitiated, said Mr. Musk left us in no doubt that he's right behind us and launched ongoing negotiations about a financial contribution. It's the first time that either Farage or Musk have acknowledged rumours that Mr. Musk is considering a huge donation, which could be the largest in British political history. I think I'm right in saying it's not allowed at the moment. You can't just go and get foreign cash into your party. The SpaceX and Tesla entrepreneur is a vocal critic of the Labour government. He accused Keir Starmer of eroding freedom of speech by running a tyrannical police state. Mr. Farage shared a photograph of the three of them. He wasn't on his own, by the way. Nick Candy was there. Nick Candy is a property magnate. He's a former Tory donor, by the way. He's also a squillionaire too. All-round nice bloke. The Candy brothers, you know, great business heads. They've done, you know, brilliant work in their entrepreneurial and business department. Nothing wrong with any of that. He's now the treasurer of Reform. So this is to me the really interesting bit is this is the Reform Party going from what was actually a private company half an hour. When we went to the election, even though they got 5 MPs, they weren't an acknowledged political party. They were a company owned solely by Nigel Farage. Now they are a political party. They are putting their tentacles out. They are having a look around for local offices and representation so they can say, you know, we're all over the place. A big wad of money from Mr. Musk would be massive in terms of being able to refine what they are doing and really focus in onto areas that they need to task. So Mr. Candy is the treasurer. He's promising to bring tens of millions of pounds in. And there's a lot to look at here. But I think the interesting area is Elon Musk. Elon Musk getting involved in British politics, regardless of who it is. I mean, the euphoria of everyone's global establishment figure. He's the good billionaire, by the way. Elon Musk getting involved. Lots of people, yeah, go Elon, go. You know, I'm uncomfortable with this. This man is about to take up a senior position in Trump's administration. Meeting with a British political party is a little bit strange when it's not the party of government. Now, having a powwow is one thing. Giving an endorsement and a potential donation is something else. I think we would, if we discovered Elon had been meeting the Lib Dems or the SNP, I think we would have something to say about that. Bill Gates, the bad billionaire, he met with Starmer the other day and social media lost its absolute mind over that. I would have a problem if the Sultan of Brunei was cozying up right now to the Tories or some shady Chinese businessman and politician getting up close and personal with the Green Party. We'd be asking questions about that. What's in it for them? Well, of course, you have to remember, why is Mr. Musk supporting Donald Trump? He's supporting Donald Trump, but this is previously a lifelong Democrat, by the way, supporting Donald Trump because it's good for his business. It's good for Tesla. It's good for everything else he's doing, his Neuralink business, his SpaceX business, his X business, etc. And there it is. I mean, Elon Musk is the most unlikely hero of the right I can think of. I'm not buying this old shizzle for Mr. Musk. I quite like him, by the way, and I think he's an incredible businessman. The other stuff, I don't really want to hear about the other stuff. He's just a bloke with some opinions. He just happens to be a very influential one. But, you know, when he's messing around with a company that attempts to link the human brain with artificial intelligence, in any other walk of life, most of the people that think this guy is the Messiah will be going, we don't want this fella anywhere near. Bill Gates buys up a company where, you know, apparently they're going to put some stuff in cows' bums to stop them being, to stop them passing wind so much. And that's outrageous. Elon Musk wants to plant something in your brain. That's absolutely fine because it's Elon Musk. I mean, I'm exaggerating the point to make the point. I think Bill Gates is also in the brain game as well, as it happens. So the point here is, if you look at somebody like him, he only really has his own interests at heart here. You know, the whole Twitter thing. And there is some real reasons to be careful about government policy around freedom of speech. It's all very well saying, you know, we don't want kids radicalised. That's fine. I also don't want genuine news being doctored because it hurts somebody's feelings. So I'm kind of with Musk on that a bit, although I do understand the need for a clean-up. I just don't know how you do it. It's not my job. It's not within my pay grade. So should Mr. Musk be allowed to get involved in British politics? 0344 499 1000. And maybe you can shine some light on that. And we all do it to a degree. You know, a bit of confirmation bias kicks in. You know, he's a good guy because he thinks like we do and he supports the same party as us. If he supported another party, you know, when... who's the Green entrepreneur? Dale Vince. When Dale Vince was donating squillions to the Labour Party, you know, people were outraged by that. How dare... Who is this person? I'm not sure whether I want any of these characters donating anything to political parties. In fact, there is a good argument to say that political parties even, should be state funded. I don't know about that. 0344 499 1000. Should Elon Musk be allowed to get involved in British politics? Your views on that, and just the wider issue about that curious relationship and what you think is going on there. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Back with us is our friend Steve N. Allen, the comedian and broadcaster. Afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon. Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. And a bottle of... No, that's another thing, isn't it? Yes. Ho, ho, ho. Yeah, bottle of rum. That's a pirate thing, isn't it?
Do you know what? Pirates have Christmas too. We're inclusive. Why not? They just don't know when to celebrate it due to the international time zones. But other than that,
yes, they don't say ho, ho, ho. They say yo, ho, ho, don't they?
Well, it's 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as Meatloaf once said.
That's very true. Let's move away from this, shall we, Steve?
Yes, please.
Let's talk about Elon Musk. Ready to bankroll, we understand, Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. Could be the biggest donation in political history. Let's remind ourselves of the man behind the donation, introduced here by the President of the United States.
His name is Elon Musk. He saved free speech. He created so many different great things. Where is he? Come on up here, Elon. He created the first major American car company in generations, and his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space.
There it is. What are you making of all of that, Steve? I mean, it's unconventional, this, and it wouldn't be quite such a talking point if Mr. Musk wasn't about to take up a fairly senior position within Trump's administration. That's the sort of game changer of the terms and conditions of this debate, I guess.
But even without that, though, and I'm not sure how major that role is, he's basically just going to be the time and motion studies guy, isn't he? He's basically
get rid of them, get rid of them, close that department, shut that office, and he might be right on quite a lot of it, by the way.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I'm not. So I don't think that's the game changer for me. It's more about we should have a drive to stop ourselves being more like America all the time. We're already obese and can't spell. Why do we have to follow everything? Like, their politics is tainted by all the money. Basically, you can't become the president unless you've got some billionaires behind you. And if we end up with the same thing over here, you stand no chance of getting to become the party that leads this nation unless you've got some billionaires behind you. Then I guess we never, ever get a tax increase for a billionaire. So it will skew our policy in our politics in a way that I don't think I want. I like the way we do it.
Yeah.
You don't, especially have the idea of having these international billionaires. Come on, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. We had to row in pubs about sovereignty and control and our parliament being sovereign. Stop letting American billionaires getting in control of stuff.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, why is that okay? You know, we don't want Brussels correctly anywhere near this sceptred isle, but a bloke that builds rockets and wants to stick a prong in your brain is absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean, and also that clip of Donald Trump was great, wasn't it? He's the guy who's invented, long pause, so many things. That's why I didn't Google him in time. Yeah.
What's your favourite album? The greatest hits. You know, it's all there, isn't it? Let's move then to the Waspy story. This is another... I don't think this is really embarrassing for Labour. This is the classic case of be careful what you say in opposition. Because in opposition, you support everything, you condemn everything, you go for all the big hits, and you stand shoulder to shoulder with people who are apparently victims of governmental injustice. And then you become the government and you realise, it's a slightly different gig doing this. This is Labour accused of hypocrisy after abandoning a pledge to compensate women hit by the increase in state pension age. Just to remind ourselves of what Angela Rayner, of all people, it's our Ange, had to say about Labour's plans for the Waspy women before they were elected.
Well, the government failed the women who were born in the 1950s. They stole their pension, that contract, that agreement that they thought they had, and then accelerated it so that those women didn't have the chance to prepare for that. We said we'll right that injustice, and within the 5 years of the Labour government, we will compensate them for the money that they've lost. This is their money that they've had stolen off them, and it's completely unacceptable. And any government should act responsibly to these women who have looked after their children through that period. They're often looking after elderly relatives now, and they're a part of our society that have felt really unjust by the way they've been treated, and it's absolutely right that we deal with this issue.
They feel really unjust, apparently, Steve. But there she is, laying it on the line. We will compensate them. They've had money stolen, she said, which is an interesting way to define this one.
Yeah, I mean, Labour have now been accused of saying anything to get into power, and that really is the fail, isn't it? Because they didn't need to. Yeah. This was the one election when you didn't need to make promises. You didn't need to write cheques that your backside can't cash, because all they needed to do on the run up to the election was go like, look at the state of these guys. And that they could have had that on posters, and they still would have won without all of these promises. So now, yeah, they've painted themselves into corners. And the amount of money we're talking about wouldn't have been that difficult to just follow through on this one. Yeah. Pay the women. We can have the debate about whether you think it's thoroughly deserved or not, that maybe they were informed, but by lettering, do you presume that people read the letters, all of these things. But the amount of money we're talking about, I mean, there was a story last week about £6 billion spent on pointless research, like the eco effects of Star Wars and rubbish like that. Take some of that £6 billion. Stop doing pointless research. Pay a few of these things so you get some good headlines. This is what's really bothering me about this Labour government. They seem to think that they're so right, they don't need to worry about their unfortunate headlines. Yeah, you do. Because it's going to be a popularity contest again the next time there's an election.
And I think, Steve, on this particular point, I mean, Julia was talking about this earlier, and she's, it was always, I mean, the people that should be compensated are all the men that had to retire later than women for some reason, despite women living longer. Which was always an extraordinary injustice. So that bit, one for the lads, has never, ever been fought, that particular battle. I'm just turning this thing on its head. But the women, I mean, they weren't left empty-handed. They could carry on working. I mean, it's not as if you didn't have any money. You can carry on with your job. You just didn't have the right to retire with a state pension. And, yeah, it's not desirable when they make changes. I think there was one particular group within the group that were very badly affected for some very specific reasons. Maybe you could look at that one group. But the biggest story here is just, we saw it with I've lost count of it. People keep sending me pictures of Labour MPs in opposition in the run-up to the election, holding placards saying, we will fight for the winter fuel allowance. These are the people that went on to vote to abolish it in some areas. So there's that, and then there's this, and it just kind of feeds into a sort of an inept, woefully inexperienced, not particularly intelligent government. And I think we've seen that, and the clip we showed, I suppose, maybe highlights it more than anything else possibly could, because it had Angela Rayner in it.
Yeah, but also this ruins politics, because if we normalise, that's what they say on Twitter, like, let's not normalise the idea that a government or a party in opposition can make promises, but when they get in go, no, well, we didn't know. Well, then that's it then. From now on, we never trust anyone in opposition. The Tories are starting to do it already. Robert Jenrick, most days, is coming out with a plan where you just think to yourself, yeah, you should have done that like 6 months ago, man. What are you doing? So now it's just a case of you're in opposition, say whatever you want, and at some point go, oh, what was I like? That's not the reality that I have to face.
Yeah.
Well, then we don't trust you anymore. And that's a bad state of affairs.
Absolutely right. Steve, stay with us. Steve and Alan is with us looking through the big stories of the day. We're going to go to your response as well. On that question of Elon Musk, should Elon Musk get involved in British politics? Should any kind of foreign business person or politician in this way get involved, be allowed to be involved to the point of substantial donations in British politics? More on that on the way. 0344 499 1000.
Let's be clear. Elon Musk loves the United Kingdom, the home of English-speaking nations. He's got serious business interests here, whether it's X, whether it's Tesla, whether it's Starlink, and he wants the United Kingdom to do well. He wants our economy to grow, and he recognises that Labour's a catastrophe and that Britain needs reform in every sense, and that's why he's been speaking to Nigel, met our new Treasurer, Nick Candy, and, you know, he's put out there on X that, you know, we've got to turn this country around. We've got to reform our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Steve and Alan is with us. We are looking through the big stories, including this one, Steve. Police cuts, potential police cuts. Police forces may have to cut up to 3,500 officers next year due to a funding package that critics say makes cuts inevitable. Of course, this is a government that, you know, in many, certainly when they were in opposition, and Theresa May was slashing police numbers were another thing they were very vocal on was, this wouldn't happen under our watch. Now, the last Tories did get the numbers back up, but there were still they got new recruits back up, but they were still short because people at the other end were leaving or retiring early and the like. This is not going to... this is not a good look for this government if you're cutting police officers who are only just starting to recover.
Yeah, what I like about this is if you want to take some time off around Christmas, you could just record you saying, this is not a good look for the government. Look what they promised before and they're doing now. And then just play that on any story that breaks between now and Christmas and you'll be absolutely on the money. You can't... You can't pick... You've got to pick one side, right? You can't get rid of 3,500 police officers if you're also the party releasing people early. Because pick a side. You can't do the one where you release people from jail because you need the space and then also get rid of the police. I suppose... You might have been worried about how many of those people you release who go back to prison. Well, one great way to make sure that doesn't happen is to cut the police after you've released them so that they won't be caught doing the crime. And then you can say, look, recidivism is down because we don't have a police force anymore.
Yeah, absolutely that. That's the obvious thing, isn't it? We'll get to that point where the view, the perception of being a police officer, our views of cops, which has struggled a lot, recently because of some terrible headlines from a tiny minority, but the impact is absolutely huge. The last thing the police need, but we'll keep our eye on that story. Let's look at this story as well, Steve. The UK government introducing orders for children as young as 10 to prevent online radicalisation with restrictions on internet use and mandatory interventions. How the heck they do this, however, is a whole other story.
Yeah, this is like people who've never met children before. Like, they're better at the internet than you are. Doesn't matter what you think. They know about visible panty lines or whatever those things. VPNs, that's a different thing, isn't it? They know all about that. So there's no way to really enforce it, I suppose, because that's the thing of the internet. It seems to be omnipresent. They'll be getting themselves some Elon-based satellites or something. Yeah. My immediate response was to think, oh, well, I don't really care. What, you might be a young person without access to the internet? And then I went into my 4 Yorkshireman style kind of, when I was growing up, we only had dial-up. If you wanted to see a rude picture, you had to watch it load in. That taught you patience. But I suppose, so I'm not against the idea, if we can stop people being radicalised by controlling the internet, but I don't trust any government to control the internet.
Well, that's partly Elon Musk's problem, isn't it, with this government, about the controlling of the internet. It's all very well saying, we'll control radicalisation and people who say terrible, litigious things or incite and whatever. But in doing that, where do you draw the line? If COVID is the obvious example. If anyone had a different opinion to the government press release of the day, and we now know, looking back on it, how iffy some of those press releases were, would we be told you can't talk about that, you can't print that because of a law? And that's where Musk becomes a fairly, essential force in this argument, really.
Yeah, I don't even think you need to go back to COVID. The riots are also the obvious example, because I think I would be foolish to trust a government with the ability to take you off the internet anyway. But the one that we're looking at right now, we kind of know they got form for saying, oh, here are some social media messages that we think were wrong. We think they were maybe even risky, maybe even dangerous. Yeah. And therefore you're off to prison. No, I'm with you all the way down that sentence until that end bit. People are allowed to be thoroughly wrong without being sent to prison for it. So now we know where the line is. That's the question, isn't it? Where was the line? Well, we know where the line is. They've got form on this. So would you let them take you off the internet? Take people off the internet. Look, I'm not even saying anything bad about China and this Prince Andrew thing, because my router's Huawei and I don't want them to unplug me. And so it's a worry, isn't it? You don't want people taking you off the internet. Don't give a government the power to do that. Now, it still leaves the space of how do you stop kids being radicalised? Well, there must be another way. Yeah. It can't just simply be unplug the router.
But it may well turn out to be the only way is unplugging the router. We are going to watch that one with interest. And finally, this Labour, more humiliation after a song called Keir Starmer and the Granny Harmers surges in the charts. Let's have a little listen.
It'll be freezing this Christmas while our money goes abroad. It'll be freezing this Christmas. Rachel Reeves is a fraud. Cold, so cold, without fuel at home this Christmas.
There it is. It'll be freezing this Christmas. I was trying to think who originally recorded Lonely this Christmas. Was it Mud, Steve?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, look, you should be one of them pop DJs. Great song.
It's always between me and Gambaccini. You know, like between us, you know, we've got this thing covered, I think, Steve. There it is. Freezing this Christmas, a parody song mocking Labour's removal of the winter fuel allowance. I mean, look, you know, if you work in politics, you will be lampooned, caricatured, satirised, and, of course, there'll be parodies of things. That goes with the territory. But this one seems fairly poignant because it's true.
It is, although I don't know if this is the hill to die on, but in the song they rhyme home with warm. Now, mate, you lost me. I would have backed you all the way, but that don't rhyme, does it? Those two words do not rhyme. If the guy who wrote it said it took him an hour, well, maybe you should have took like an hour and a half to fix that one.
Yes, yeah, I do. I don't think even he would claim an Ivan Novello on this one somehow, Steve. But it does nonetheless. It sort of, I suppose I was about to say adds fuel, but that's maybe the wrong turn of phrase. But it does feed in to an existing narrative that this government are getting a whole load of things very, very wrong.
And this is their fault. Again, look, every single time we do this, I'm sure I end up saying the same thing. Give me a call. I'll give you the heads up about the bad optics coming this way, because it's so easy to spot. And when we first started talking about getting rid of fuel allowance, we were saying all it's going to take is there will be deaths through winter. There are deaths every winter. But this will be the 1 year when those journalists, they will be frantically looking for one that's based on not having any heat. As soon as it is, your front page is that the government's killed someone.
There it is.
You've owned that death. So I've got no sympathy for the fact that you've got a song that takes the mickey a bit, because there are worse things coming because you didn't spot it. All you needed to do, you can have the argument that millionaire pensioners don't need the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah, we all agree.
But don't. Yeah, exactly. So have that argument rather than finding it easier just to do it with pension credits. And that means that someone who's on like 13 grand ain't getting that extra 300 quid.
Correct.
That's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's the wrong place.
Spot on. Steve, as ever, thank you. Steve N. Allen with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. I want to specifically focus on the Musk story as well. Should Mr. Musk be allowed to get involved? We're going to talk to his dad in a second. He's becoming a bit of a regular on the show. So Elon Musk's dad is with us in a few moments' time. He'll shine some light on his boy, where his motivations lie. This came from John in London, said, you thought reform wouldn't make an impact at the last election and you got a shock. Well, they didn't. I didn't get a shock. I predicted they would get between the maximum of 6 and a minimum of 3 or 4 seats. We're quite close to the reform guys here on Talk. But I don't think it's not an impact in the sense of numbers. It's an impact in the sense of Nigel Farage and what reform desperately need. I mean, there's Lee Anderson, who's a fairly outspoken, popular character. John says reform will win the next election when the Labour vote collapses and the red wall seats go to reform. We don't need Musk to win. Reform will could only really win if they, other than a miracle, if they join with the Conservatives. I think that is almost going to happen in some form. I don't know whether Kemi Badenoch will last the full 5 years. She's not turning out to be quite as effective as some people thought. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Paul says, yes, Elon Musk should get involved in British politics. Anything to help get this two-tier lying Labour government out of number 10. Does it therefore become a free-for-all? So any businessman or woman / politician or working with a government, would that be all right? You know, Chinese businessman, politician wants to cozy up to the Tories, start throwing a few quid their way. Would that be, is that kind of okay? Is that a no-no? There are lines in the sand here, but where do we draw them? Mr Musk has opened discussions with Reform UK leader Nigel Farage about making a major donation to the party to overturn Labour and the Tories at the next election. I mean, they are going to create an absolute storm. If there was an election tomorrow, it would be utterly fascinating. Mr Farage met at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's Florida club on Monday. He was there with Nick Candy, the British entrepreneur who's also worth a few quid himself. Nigel Farage wrote that Elon Musk believes the UK is in deep trouble. Can Elon Musk save politics in the UK? Or is it a risky idea to even entertain the idea that a foreign name, not just a businessman who's worth a few quid, but somebody who's now going to be part of, albeit in a tacit manner, the next administration. We're going to talk in a moment to Karen Basra, Deputy Director for Engagement of Unchecked UK. I'll tell you more about them in a moment. But first, let's speak to Errol Musk, Elon's dad, who we spoke to just a few weeks ago. Errol, nice to have you with us again, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. So I mean, obviously, you know, you're familiar with your son's journey towards working with Mr. Trump. What do you make of this kind of tangent along the way where he might be working with a British political party as well?
Well, you know, it's the same people coming together, you know, to try and put an end to the crazy directions that some of these so-called governments are taking countries. And the people in the street all know that their governments are doing things that they don't want, and nobody seems to know what to do about it. So we've had this terrific comeback of Donald Trump, and it will spread across the world, I imagine. It has already. It's quite obviously spreading across the world. Yeah. And Elon getting involved, helping the Reform Party with a little bit of money. If they need money, they should get money. They shouldn't be held back because they don't have money. That's wrong. And this government that you've got at the moment with Starmer, he's taking you in a direction, hardball-wise. He's taking you hardball in a certain direction, and you are all somewhat, from what I can see on the shows and things and the news, gobsmacked by it. You don't know what to do about it. Yeah. So the thing is, you have to go hardball back. You have to dig your heels in. You have to say, no, this guy was elected in a sort of something wrong, wonky election. And this idea that you're going to wait 4 years, if Starmer's got 4 years to do what he's doing, well, I don't know. Then I think you're going to have to, you know, start thinking very hard what you're going to do.
Indeed. It's even worse, Errol. It's actually 4.5 years. So he's got even longer than we thought. And you're absolutely spot on. One of my colleagues, Julia, earlier was saying, you know, she said, even I didn't think the Labour Party could be any worse than I expected. They are far worse than many people expected. It is absolutely right. You've pointed out the kind of this sort of upside down world we're living in. You know, left is right, night is day, black is white. It's all of these kind of strange universe that these kind of the sort of socialist mentality exists within. And you're right, it does need shaking up, but it needs somebody who can make that happen. I guess the criticism comes on two fronts. Should a foreign businessman be able to get involved in another country's political activities, particularly at this high level, and particularly when you're going to be working alongside the new American administration, as Elon will be?
Well, yes. Let me answer that by saying Elon is fully entitled to a British passport. There would be absolutely no reason for him to get a British passport. And by birth, by me and my parents. So he's entitled to become British if he wanted to. Okay. At the moment, I think you know, I think that it is not. It is a bit of a problem when you talk about other people from outside your country doing funding. I think it's happening all over the world, so I don't think it's a new thing. But at the end of the day, you know, whether it's a loan, make it a loan. I mean, you know, the Americans loaned the British in the World War II, you know, so make it a loan if they want. But my point is that Farage, who, you know, seems to be the only, more or less the only real alternative direction that he certainly talks sense. Whether he's strong enough to be the next Prime Minister, I don't know, but we need somebody with, you know, the gonads down there need to be pretty big.
Yes, seismic, I think. Seismic is the phrase.
He's not prepared to be simply shut up, you know, in the old kind, pleasant English style. It has to be somebody who's prepared to be as hardball as what Starmer is. I mean, as silly as he looks very odd to me to be in the position he's in, but he's playing a real hard ball for a guy like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not playing around. He's not messing around.
No, he's got his wish list of what he wants to do. And
yeah, he's not messing around.
He's going straight for it, and he doesn't much care what anybody thinks. Let me ask you a question. I wouldn't expect you to say bad things about your own boy, but is this because Elon is philosophically wedded to, you know, what is right in life, or is it because he's a very successful businessman?
No.
He's got skin in the game, whether it's SpaceX, whether it's Neuralink, whether it's Twitter or X, whatever it happens to be. This guy, your son, has only one thing in mind, and that is Elon Musk.
No, that's ridiculous. No. We are sort of that academic crowd that sort of sees humanity as something, you know, weird and wonderful, and why, you know, who are we, you know, and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So no, I told them as children they must go to America, because I took them there quite a lot when they were younger, because that was where you could like be as free and as free to do the things that need to be done as possible. And so we all went over there we just couldn't think that the US could do anything wrong. I mean, as far as we were concerned, you know, it was just the most perfect, you know, constitution, and, you know, the founding fathers, all that. It was just so perfect, and it was. That's why Elon has done so well there. And now he's seen, and he, for a long time, he's sort of like myself, you know, didn't question anything. And then only in the last few years has he realized, well, you know, it's not going to carry on that way. It's going to start changing. It's going to become a different kind of society. And he's not going to be able to be in that society. He's going to have to find some other place if he wanted to continue, or, you know, something along those lines. And so he realized, I've got to stop this. And, you know, as I've said on your previous program, you know, England for us is like the parent country. And so when we look at England, we look at England, for example, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, you know, as an expat. I mean, even in Australia or Canada or wherever, you know, you always like look at England and you say, well, you know, England always knows best, you know, and so we've sort of ingrained into the English character. And now we look at it and we say, no, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And so I come back to what I was saying. England has been hijacked, and it's been hijacked through a sort of wonky election that people have tried to explain to me, and where people didn't really vote properly. And it's been hijacked by a group of people who do not have English interests at heart. They are going to take England down a road that is not going to be England. And you've got to play hardball back. And does Nigel Farage, I've no objection to him getting money if you've got a loan or if you've got anything from anywhere, if that's what he needs. But is he the right man? Has he got the strength? You need someone with real strength. And maybe he'll show real strength, but you can't be all nice and nicey to each other, you know, or what do you call it?
So, yeah, no, indeed.
You've got to start punching back real hard.
So real strength and gonads the size of Saturn. That, I think, was your more or less what you said a little earlier. Listen, great to have you on again, Errol. Really good to get your views and your take. That's Errol Musk, father of Elon Musk, with his view. We had a bit of he kept saying England, by the way. He meant Great Britain or United Kingdom, whichever is your flavour. But I take his point. His boy Elon is doing this for the good of common sense and humanity. Karen Basra is Deputy Director of Engagement at Unchecked UK. The campaign group, they aim to broaden political and public discussions around things like regulation, for example. Good to have you with us again, Karen. I mean, you heard what Mr Musk had to say. I mean, allowing for he would say that, wouldn't he, because it's his son. What did you make of that? I mean, he did identify some interesting points. There is a feeling in the sort of British psyche at the moment that stuff's a little bit upside down.
Ian, I think that the point is what's in it for Musk himself, right? He's not a kind of benevolent billionaire as painted by his dad. I think, he's a canny businessman. He invested $200 million into the US election, ended up sort of the value of his company shot up overnight, about 75%. And he landed himself a nice plum government job, heading up the Department for Government Efficiency. Now, I think he wants to try and replicate that here. And I'm not sure we want to see that happen. And I'm not sure many of your listeners will.
I mean, we can question, I said earlier, if we discovered that the Sultan of Brunei was, sitting around the table with Ed Davey from the Liberal Democrats, people would be losing their minds. Or, a Chinese plutocrat who was, works in the administration as well as runs a big business, was sitting there with the Green Party, the SNPs, would be going, what's that all about? But, good old Elon, it's a whole different sort of sense of what's happening. But and if he wasn't working with Trump, maybe it would be a different conversation. I don't know. I have no doubt in everything you just alluded to there that this, the main person that Mr Musk looks after is Mr Musk and his, business. I mean, and I don't blame him for that. I don't blame him for giving it a go. But he does speak, it seems, to that, the Reform UK kind of support base, the voter base, which is projected to grow. The party is growing. Mr Musk chimes with that. So he's likely to be very, very useful. And lots of people might say, look, this is unconventional. It's a bit weird, bit unusual. In any other world, we just think that Elon Musk was a rich weirdo, but he's our rich weirdo, so we like him. So weird as it might be and strange as it might be, this is going to play rather well for a lot of people.
I think, Ian, it's not even about Elon Musk in particular. It's about his ideas, right? And I think that's the thing that we've got to challenge here. And it's not even about reform in particular. Remember, Musk and the Trump administration have been having conversations with Kemi Badenoch. So, I think she just met with J.D. Vance. She's a big fan of this idea of the Department for Government Efficiency. Mm-hmm. Pete Mandelson, who is probably going to be our next ambassador to the US, has said, look, we've got to make mates with this guy. So, regardless of the kind of political implications, we're going to have to deal with this man and his ideas. And I think the fundamental thing is they're just not very good ideas. He wants to kind of slash government spending by 75%, or he wants to get rid of 75% of government employees. He thinks he can do that. I just don't, we've got to think about what are those roles, right? If we look here at the UK context, if we think about our rivers being polluted, or, and this is the thing that he really wants to gut and get at, is our Online Safety Act, the thing that keeps our kids safe online. We need people and we need manpower and we need capacity and we need powers to be able to do that. Mm. I don't think Elon Musk has any interest in that. So I don't think, he really is looking out for Reform UK's voters. I think he's just trying to, enrich himself.
I think that's probably true. And the online safety issue, you're quite right. I mean, clearly he has skin in the game. I know there is some genuine debate about, online safety meets free speech, and that is a good debate that needs to still be had. I think we all get that. But nonetheless, I mean, there is a very real sense that Trump coming into power with people like Elon Musk around him, a lot of disquiet around the Labour Party, even from some of their own supporters at the moment. Nigel Farage, very persuasive character, even if you don't like him, he's quite a mesmeric and magnetic politician. A sense that there is a sort of an anti-establishmentism going on, and it's on the rise. And by the time we get to the next election, we won't be looking at 5 Reform MPs, we'll be looking at 105 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to sort of challenge that a little bit and sort of say he's a very strange anti-establishment figure, being the richest man in the world.
Yes, there's nothing anti-establishment, of course, about Elon Musk, but, yeah, the perception is that that's who he is.
Yeah, and look, I think there's something to be said for some of that, right? If people feel that public services aren't delivering, or that their rights at work aren't being properly enforced, or, as I said earlier, there's sewage in the rivers, if people think things aren't working for them, of course they are going to look elsewhere. And that's the case that Musk and Reform are trying to make.
Yeah.
But the argument that they're making is they're going to do that by stripping away the rules, right? Which I think doesn't really chime. It doesn't really make much sense if you think about it for any amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on which rules you're looking at, but I certainly take your point. Karen, thank you as ever. Karen Basra, Deputy Director of Engagement at Unchecked UK. They're a campaign organisation that aim to broaden political and public discussion, particularly around things like regulation. But that's his view. You heard Elon Musk's dad's view. What's your take on all of this? That question, should Elon Musk even be allowed to get involved in British politics? 0344 499 1000.
He wanted to show that his solidarity with the Baltic states in case Russia decides to invade them.
They know we've got solidarity, and that's really lovely. But I'm sorry, you've got to. This was a major policy decision that was taken, a major betrayal. Kiston was not even in the country when these. And he knows. He knows the people around him know about this narrative of never hear Keir.
Right.
I genuinely don't understand what he thinks he's doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Nigel, not that one, says, let Elon Musk spend his money where he wants. Sure, it will be spent wisely by Nigel. You could do that, but, I mean, you'd have to apply that then to anyone in the world that wants to just shed loads of money at any political party, from a foreign government or a foreign individual would be allowed to do it, and that would be kind of slightly game-changing. One here says, if Farage does a deal to form any partnership with the Conservatives, he will lose his current voter base. We don't want any of them Tory wasters who did nothing with that 80-seat majority infesting and rotting out. Reform. There it is. I think I read that correctly, that last bit. But yes, I mean, and there's, of course, a lot of Tories that won't go near reform either. So it wouldn't be pretty if they try to put this thing together. We will watch with interest. Vernon is in Staffordshire. What do you got for us, Vernon? Good afternoon.
Calling from Germany, actually, Ian.
Hey!
How are you?
Well, good as gold at this end. Welcome along. What are your thoughts on all of this?
The world is changing. If you take where I am at the moment, Schultz has had a vote of no confidence. There's an election in February.
Yeah.
The so-called experts need to read the room. The world is changing. The citizens of the countries are no longer prepared to accept the status quo.
What is changing, though? Because I mean, we often hear this, and I've said it myself as well.
Politicians.
Was there a tipping point, though? Have we just, stuff has happened? Is social media the driving force because it's forced people or encouraged people into debating stuff they never debated before? Could it be that?
So let's analyse it very briefly. So I voted to leave Brexit. I voted to leave with Brexit, and my superiors, that's what they think they are in Westminster, have never implemented it. So the peasants once again got the chance to vote, but ultimately the so-called toffs at Westminster, they decided, no, Morrissey, you don't have the intelligence, you've had your vote, but we're not implementing it. And now you have a Prime Minister who on an unauthorised level has lied his way into power, and now he's doing whatever he wants. And let's be frank about it, Ian. Political parties, the two main ones, they've been taking money from every wife and strafe that they can over the last
True,
decade.
but there's always been some red lines on that, and it doesn't normally come. It does.
Really?
Well, I mean, somebody might have thrown the odd brown envelope into the mix. I don't dispute that.
Brown envelope? I would suggest they've delivered it by lorry load.
That quite possibly. But what I'm saying is the basic laws of the land do preclude some people from donating to a party in this country.
It didn't stop somebody getting knighted, a Russian gentleman, to go into the House of Lords.
Yeah, but he was good. He was good.
He was great.
Yeah, that's what we needed. We needed some Russians in the House of Lords.
It was massive.
I'm with you. Look, I'm with you 100%. I don't imagine under reform that bit would necessarily change very much, would it? I'm sure there'd be a few jobs for mates.
But the reality of it is, Ian, if you look at it, the only reason why there is the furore at the moment is, one, it's Nigel Farage, and Nigel makes the world in Europe move. He single-handedly told the EU what he was going to do, and 25 years later, he did it.
He did it, and there's no doubt about that. That cannot, indeed, that cannot be ignored. But if you look at the reality, Vernon, most people didn't vote for reform. In fact, the biggest threat to the Conservatives, electorally speaking, this isn't actually fully factual, but that they lost more votes to Labour and the Lib Dems than they did to reform.
Yeah, so it's going, honestly, it is going to change at a seismic. If we had an election tomorrow, the transformation would be seismic.
I don't dispute that. Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I still don't understand why Labour got a landslide this time. By the way, I still couldn't. You know, I know a lot has happened in the last 6 months since they came to power, but even before that, I've no idea why people who were previously Conservative voters suddenly went, I know, I'm going to vote for a Socialist Party. It's got Angela Rayner and Ed Miliband in it, for God's sake. Listen, Vernon, I stopped there for time. Thank you. Don't go away, Tony in Suffolk. We will get you on. There's a lot of response on this. Should Elon Musk, and I suppose you could say Elon Musk happens to be the person of the day, you could argue any kind of foreign billionaire, be involved in British politics. He is, and you know what? That's not going to change. Stand by. Watch this space. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. Lots to get through in the next hour as well. We're going to be joined to talk through the big stories of the day. Kevin Schofield from HuffPost UK is going to be with us as well. And, of course, more from you too on that question of Elon Musk and British politics. Let's first get the news headlines at 2 o'clock here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, good afternoon. 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. Welcome back to the programme. Lots to get through. Elon Musk apparently ready to bankroll Nigel Farage and the Reform Party with a possible, well, they're talking about $100 million donation. Whatever it happens to be, however, if it happens, would be hugely significant. Can Musk single-handedly assist in overthrowing Labour and the Tories to finally shake up British politics? We'll continue to take your questions on that. And should Mr. Musk or any other foreign billionaire be even allowed to get involved in British politics? Also this afternoon, Labour backtracking on another promise, with Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall saying the government would not pay a single penny to the 3.8 million WASPy women who had to work longer to get their pension. It's egg on face territory for Liz, Ange and Sakia. More comments on that. And as you've been hearing, 3,500 police jobs could be cut after, guess who? Rachel Reeves' tax grab threatens funding for the police. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. This comes in from Simon in Devon, who says, yes, Elon Musk can get involved. We're donating to reform. We need radically new politics in the UK. We need the country to be run by business leaders more than ever before. Today it was announced that the UK debt to GDP stands at 98%. With a national debt at £3 trillion. That debt equates to £37,000 per person. Insane and unsustainable. Wastage off the scale. Nigel Farage and Reform are talking the talk. All eyes will be on Trump, Musk and the lot of them. Get rid of DEI, finish the forever wars, shrink the size of the state, create homegrown businesses, most importantly, create hope. Our uni-party politics has run out of ideas. America seems exciting again. Make England great again. Well, and the rest of the UK, for that matter. The complete opposite of the Uni Party in its dour race to the bottom. Bring it on. Have a great Christmas, says Simon in Devon. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the line that I picked up out of that. Nigel Farage and Reform are talking the talk, but, of course, can they do the next bit? With us to dissect all of this and the other big stories of the day, Kevin Schofield, political editor at HuffPost UK, is with us. How are you, Kevin?
I'm good, Ian. How are you?
Good as gold at this end. Fresh from PMQs, the last one of the year, I guess.
It was, yeah, it was quite feisty today, actually. Yeah. It felt like Kemi Badenoch has maybe found her stride a little bit. You know, I think we've spoken before about her previous PMQs performances have been a little bit underwhelming, but today she was our best one yet, I think. I mean, I wouldn't say there was like a knockout blow or anything like that, but there were no obvious gaffes. She asked the right questions, and yeah, I think she seems to be getting into her stride a little bit now.
Yeah. At the moment, it's early days, of course. This whole Farage story feeds in to Kemi Badenoch and how good she turns out to be. Do the Tories do this, deal, which is now looking, based on just on these current stories, that the Reform might not even need a deal with. They're that confident they're going to hoover up the whole place. I mean, it would be, we thought it was extraordinary when Boris Johnson lost a big majority. It would be extraordinary if a party that has 5 MPs at the moment were able to overturn Labour's thumping majority. It might be a smaller share of the vote, but a big majority.
I mean, it would be absolutely astonishing. I don't think we're anywhere near there yet, but what will be interesting to keep an eye on next year is the local elections in May. I think that is going to be very interesting to see exactly how Reform perform and how the Conservatives do. So the last time these seats were up 4 years ago, the Tories got something like 2,000 seats. Reform got 2. So they've got quite a lot of a lot of work to do, but certainly you're starting from a low base, so anything really, and a few hundred, who knows, that'll be a really good night. The Tories, they've got quite a big high watermark to meet, and again, Kemi Badenoch, a lot of pressure on her as well, because she'll have been in the job for 6 months by then. If they go backwards, then she'll come under quite a lot of pressure.
It's interesting, isn't it, how we kind of the very passionate endorsement of Reform from Simon that I just read out before we started talking. I was talking to somebody recently who said it's just interesting, sort of confirmation bias plays its part. If this is a party you like, people like Elon Musk, they like Reform, they like Trump, so therefore they like Elon Musk. But if Elon Musk was bankrolling the Labour Party, they would hate Elon Musk. Absolutely loathe the guy, or any other party for that matter. And somebody said to me, and this was sort of supposition, but based on the economic values and kind of inclination of the Reform MPs we've got, the winter fuel allowance debate, they picked up one example, wouldn't exist at all, because there wouldn't be any winter fuel allowance under a Reform government. That's how they would work. That's not in there. They don't believe that the state should be stepping in and paying to put your radiator on. It goes very much against what they stand for. Now, Nigel Farage would say that's cobblers. That's absolutely untrue. They pay more to the pensioners, etc. But based on who they are and what they kind of fiscally and environmentally and socially stand for, fuel allowances and stuff like that they wouldn't recognise that being the job of a government.
No, you're right. They're very much small state conservatives, really. At the moment, they're in the luxurious position politically of being able to be in opposition, no responsibility whatsoever, just criticise the government, say all the right things that people want to hear, and you see their polling numbers rise accordingly. I think it'll be interesting come the next election. If they are seen as, if they keep making this type of progress, if they are seen as a viable, say, opposition, if it looks like they're going to get, quite a few, dozens, if not hundreds of MPs elected, then I think there'll be much more scrutiny of their manifestos. I mean, there was virtually no scrutiny of their manifesto at the last election.
No.
It was pretty wacky. A lot of the spending commitments and tax cuts were just completely off the scale. So, but they got away with it because everyone knew, well, it doesn't matter because they won't get elected.
True.
If that's different in 4 years' time, I think they may come under a lot more scrutiny. And those types of policies that you've mentioned there, Nigel's position on the NHS, for instance, he's not a big fan of the state-funded health service. That might see him sort of come up against public opposition, so it'll be interesting to see
That's
how
true.
that goes.
I heard somebody this morning, I can't remember who it was somebody on Talk saying, one of the problems Reform have got, they need more than just Nigel Farage. I mean, they got Lee Anderson, who's a very sort of forthright kind of speaker. It's all about the sort of tonal delivery, isn't it? And the confidence within saying controversial things in a fairly casual sort of way that's very attractive to voters. But you need more than just Nigel and Lee. You need a lot of these people who are, going to be really good and just as convincing.
Absolutely, and they've got to be very careful as well about the candidates that they choose. Obviously, they ran into a bit of trouble the last election with some unsavoury characters standing for them. They had to stand down because of previous stuff that they'd said about immigration, etc. So they have to be very careful as well. That people at the moment, people are willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. A lot of voters are willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're fed up of Labour, they're fed up of the Tories, but they might find it a little bit queasy if it turns out that there's some dodgy characters standing for reform. So they've got to be very careful about that as well.
Indeed. Well, they had it last time, didn't they? Nigel Farage admits there was no, the vetting process was really non-existent.
Yeah, and they're professionalising the party.
They're
so
doing
that'll be a
all
big
of that.
test of it,
Because what I sense with Reform, it isn't just about... I mean, if I open the switchboard now and ask people to explain Reform's education policy, I wouldn't get a single call. I don't think anybody would. I don't even know if they have a policy on education. So... but what they do stand for is something different, isn't it? And a couple of people have identified it as a sort of an overriding sense that the world has gone a bit bonkers in lots of ways. You know, the sort of whole gender debate, it's a bit mad. And, the not being able to stop boats sailing across to the UK to the tune of hundreds a day. It's just this bonkers world. It's gone upside down. It's Alice in Wonderland. Someone make the madness stop. That's really where we're at on this.
Yeah, it's a bit like Trump in America, isn't it? Somebody who's going to come in and just disrupt the system. The current system isn't working. They would say Labour have had... No, they've not had much of a chance already, but, the Tories had 14 years. Labour have got off to a bad start. It's just more of the same. So why don't we give that other lot a chance just to shake things up and see how it goes, and that's certainly what they're feeding into right now.
Indeed. Let's move to this story then, the Waspy story. It's worth having a listen to a clip from Prime Minister's Question Time today. This is all about women and 3.8 million of them who really feel a sense of injustice on what happened when they changed the pension rules. Let's have a listen to what was said at PMQs when asked a question by the MP for Liverpool West, Ian Byrne.
In my constituency of Liverpool West Derby, I have more than 5,000 women affected. Alongside a great many members in this House, I believe these women are owed compensation for the injustice done to them at the hands of the state. So will the Prime Minister give members the opportunity to vote on whether they believe Waspy women are owed compensation?
And the simple fact of the matter is, in the current economic circumstances, the taxpayer can't bear the burden of tens of billions of pounds in compensation. Well, they're chuntering away. In 14 years, they accelerated the changes and not once spoke about compensation.
So there it is. I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there's lots of evidence. A particular clip of Angela Rayner we played earlier, who was very emphatic. You would have seen it, Kevin. You know, there's no way they stood shoulder to shoulder with the WASPy women, and under a Labour government, they will get their money. Except they won't get their money under a Labour government.
Exactly, and it was hugely ironic that the minister who announced that yesterday was Liz Kendall, who herself was pictured saying, with a placard saying that she supported the WASPy women and would fight for justice for them. Yet she was the one basically saying thumbs down to any conversation. Keir Starmer as well spoke in opposition about how it had been an injustice and that wrong needed to be righted, and lo and behold, here they are. They can't do it now that they're in power. Now, I think a lot of people would understand the fiscal argument, yet there's obviously not any money around, and it'd be a lot of money to compensate these women. But what sticks in the throat, again, it comes back to kind of what we're saying about the appeal of reform, maybe, is that when they were in opposition, they said they would do it, and now they're in government, they're not going to do it, and people just think that's hypocrisy.
And there's a bit of a list of this going on with Labour at the moment, isn't there? A lot of things. I know that, you know, there is, if you want to be generous to Starmer, a theory that they knew all of this was going to happen, get it all out the way in the first 6-7 months, and then move on. And I mean, Liz Kendall would have had a conversation about. I bet you, just coming up to the election, she'd have said to somebody, "God, if we win, I'm going to have to change my view on this."
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't in the manifesto. That's what Labour are saying as well. It wasn't in the manifesto. We didn't promise it in the manifesto. Yeah, OK, that's true, but I think that's a bit of a weak argument. People can see pictures of Liz Kendall. They see images of Angela Rayner saying, you know, I stand by the WASPy women, and that's what people don't care what was in the manifesto. They say you did that before, and now you're not doing it now, and that's.
And it also looks like Labour are having another pop at pensioners. You know, there's that, even though it's not really about that in the same sense. But that's the sort of head. It's got the word pensioner in the headline.
Absolutely, it's more pensioners after the winter fuel. Someone texts me, a Labour friend of mine texts me, saying maybe I think for his next trick, Keir Starmer's going to mug a pensioner in the middle of the street. You know, just to kind of compound the current mess that they've got into. For some reason, it's the pensioners just seem to be really getting it at the moment.
And there's even a song flying up the charts, of course, Freezing This Christmas.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's all there. But maybe Keir Starmer can turn things around with a greater majority in the House of Lords, perhaps, because there's going to be 30 new peers, 30 new Labour peers, including Sue Gray.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a bad gig, is it? I mean, how long did she work there for? About 2.5 weeks?
And not much longer, I think.
And suddenly she's in the House of Lords.
Yeah, I mean, she did such a bad job that she was effectively sacked. Officially she resigned, but she was sacked by Keir Starmer, and yes, she's going to be rewarded with a seat for life in the House of Lords, 300 odd quid a day for every day that you turn up.
It's all right, isn't it?
Not a bad little life on top of a public sector pension, which she built up over the years in the civil service. But again, you know, this was Keir Starmer said he would abolish the House of Lords. Now, Labour officially, I think that is still the ambition at some point in the future. They say, in the meantime, we need to have more Labour peers. Quite a lot of them are elderly and have died off, so we need more. Currently, we're outnumbered by Tories and the Lib Dems. But again, if people, I think it would stick in people's throat a little bit that he said he would abolish it, and now he's appointing more.
Did you ever, or do you ever, nip over to the House of Lords and have a look at the debates going on there?
Very rare, I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I've been in a handful of times
I remember
over the years.
You do get a good quality of debate in the House of Lords.
Absolutely do.
There's no doubt about
that at all. There's a much
you don't
higher
get all
level
the kind of shouting and the, you know, all of that. But it's just an interesting job because you don't have any constituents. And you can literally come and go as you please. If you check in, you get your 300 quid. I don't think it's quite. You can't just check in and check out again, can you? There's a way of monitoring.
No, that used to be the case, and you tightened the rules because a few people were absolutely.
So you got to be in there for at least 3 hours or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. You do, there is some minimum.
Oh, 3 hours for 350 quid or whatever it is. So it's curious, and of course every government does the same thing. They get into power, they stuff a few more of their own guys into an already crammed full chamber.
Yeah, it's like the biggest legislature in the world.
It's
I mean, it's absolutely farcical, really. So, I mean, what Labour have said is they're getting rid of the hereditaries, so that will knock it down a bit. But so everyone there will have been appointed. But yeah, it is. It's a curious political anachronism, really, in this country, and it's hard to defend, really, a arm of the legislature which doesn't. It's not elected. It's literally completely undemocratic.
It
but
is
no one
odd.
can agree on what to replace it with. That's the problem.
And then you have you know, I mean, some of the people going in there, councillors, union figures, donors, you know, I don't know a few of these characters as you do, and I bumped into one oddly here the other day, and she was saying to me, you know, we've been doing a lot of debate about the hereditary peers. Now, she's of a very political mindset, and it kind of makes sense that she's in there, but there's lots of other people that you think, you know, what the hell are you doing in there?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. Remember Ian Botham got made
Ian
a peer?
Botham?
I'm not sure he turns up very often. I've certainly never seen him around the place, but...
Alan Sugar?
Alan Sugar, that was Gordon Brown.
Yeah.
Made Alan Sugar.
Does Alan Sugar ever go to the House?
I have seen him speak on occasion, but not for a long, long time. But so, yeah, there are... And these are the ones that get all the headlines, naturally, because they're prominent people. And they're very controversial, because people say, well, why should they get a seat for life? Why should they get a say over our laws?
Yeah.
Because they have supported the party, or... Was Ian Botham Boris Johnson's mate? I mean, I'm not sure. He supported Brexit, I remember that. I think it was like a reward for that.
I think that it might have been that, but I don't know how instrumental he was in the...
No, he wasn't instrumental at all, but I don't know, but he got a seat in the Lords. And yeah, there's some pretty dodgy characters. I'm not saying Ian Botham a dodgy character, but there's some of them seem to get it for no obvious reason. And it's... yeah, and again, it comes back to what we're saying. It just feeds this... a cynical outlook that a lot of people have got about politics. They just think the whole system is working against them, and they want change.
I saw once. I'm surprised it didn't make the news. Actually, somebody from the House of Lords really kicking off in one of the bars, you know, who'd had way too many whiskies, and the language was all over the place, and the stalls were going left, right, and centre. And I thought, well, you're getting paid for that.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. In the end, I said, Fluella, come on, this has got to stop. This has got to stop, mate.
That's the only time I've ever been properly starstruck in a house.
100%.
Having watched Play School growing up as a little kid.
100%. Fluella Benjamin.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's the deal, isn't
Amazing.
it?
I was like properly like
I'm
awestruck.
just disappointed that she hasn't got Humpty alongside.
And Hamble. She comes in through the square window.
Hamble was ridiculous, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Hamble was surplus to requirements in that whole cast of Play School, I think.
Humpty, Hamble, and
Little Ted, Big Ted.
Little Ted, Big Ted, obviously, yeah.
And who else was it? Humpty Dumpty.
All Our Yesterdays here.
Somebody else. There was another toy in that collection. We're going to get so many calls on this.
I should know this because I religiously watched it as a kid. But it was a long time ago, to be fair.
Brian Cant. Remember him?
And Derek Thompson? Was it Derek Thompson?
Griffiths.
Derek Griffiths.
Yeah.
That was his name.
He had a good acting stroke theatre.
He was great.
After that. He was a funny guy.
Yeah, he was a good guy,
Yeah, Chloe Ashcroft or Craft or something.
Don't remember. And obviously Fluella, obviously.
Fluella, of course, it was the Don of the piece as far as we were concerned.
Yeah.
There we go, on that strange note.
A bit of a tangent there.
Just a little bit. Kevin, thank you. Good to see you. Have a lovely Christmas as well.
I sent you, yeah.
We will see Kevin Schofield in the new year right here on Talk.
he wanted to show that his solidarity with the Baltic states in case Russia decides to invade them.
I know we've got solidarity, and you know that's really lovely. But I'm sorry, you've got to. You know, this was a major policy decision that was taken, a major betrayal. Kirsten was not even in the country when these. And he knows. He knows the people around him know about this narrative of never hear Keir.
Right.
I mean, I genuinely don't understand what he thinks he's doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Paul in Fife says, how you doing, Paul, by the way, says if the Tory government are planning a comeback for the next general election, they may want to reconsider the choice of party leader. Kemi Badenoch is the latest in an ever-lengthening line of leaders who, quite frankly, can't cut it. Her performances at PMQ are at best woeful, given the fact she's been given an empty goal in the form of the worst Prime Minister and government in our history. Yeah, and in fact, curiously, thank you, Paul, for that. To compound that, last week, her main theme was attacking the government on immigration. Now, if you have been part of the last Tory party, you might want to keep your mouth shut when it comes to immigration. But there she was. And then the week before, wasn't she suggesting the Prime Minister should resign? It's like, well, got a lot of criticisms of Keir Starmer, but it was a bizarre line for the leader of the opposition to come up with for a government that's been in power about half an hour. Extraordinary, not good. This is Tony, new caller from Suffolk. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good, nice to have you with us. What are your thoughts?
It's about net zero. All we're hearing about net zero is basically they want to cover the country in photovoltaic cells. And at the moment, all the money seems to be going into getting more and more land to cover with the photoelectric cells.
Do you is this why the country needs Elon Musk, do you think, Tony?
I think that he might possibly have some influence via...
Although he also makes solar panels, so maybe he'll have an influence in selling solar panels rather than the Chinese.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't doubt that. But I think it's the other problem...
Yeah.
Is something that perhaps the cloud seeding. At the moment, the cloud seeding is causing sunlight to be reflected back, and we're in shade and cloud nearly all the time.
Right.
The problem there is the seeding of the clouds is blocking the solar panels.
Right. Who's seeding the clouds?
Well, it's the EU.
The EU are seeding the clouds?
Yeah.
Are they? God blimey. Listen, Tony, you've been great. Thank you. That's Tony in Suffolk. We're going to put him down as Caller of the Year. Let's go to Steve in Luton. Steve, how you doing?
Hello, I'm all right. It's the others.
It's all the others, isn't it? Too many of them, to be honest, Steve. What's going on? What are you thinking?
I can't believe this country's in such a state, to be honest. I'm 58. Anyway, I'm fed up. This is nothing. I don't care what people think, but I'm fed up with our diversity and inclusion. Now, if I want to be with people I want to be, that's my choice, the same as everyone else. We have a choice. We should have a referendum about, on all the TV adverts, there's black, Asian, or whatever, right? they only represent probably, say, 15 or 20% of the population. Even though it seems a lot worse, it probably isn't. So why should they have 50%? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I mix with my people. So the Irish stick with the Irish, the Polish stick with the blacks stick with the blacks, and that's what they do. That's what we all do. Now, we don't moan about them, but if the whites stick to the whites, we're classed as, we're not diverse, or we're racist because we don't want to mix with them. You know, we just naturally don't want to mix with each other.
Well, I think there's lots of examples where people have got mates who are a different colour, different shade of pigmentation. You know, there's examples of that. I broadly take your point, and there is absolutely an obsession, it seems, with making sure that every single advert on the TV includes a mixed-race family. And, you know, I haven't got a problem with that notionally, I haven't got a problem with that. A lot of people would go, well, it doesn't represent very much. That's the only problem somebody might have. Advertisers, of course, want to make sure they don't miss anybody out, whether they're white, black, brown, or any other colour for that matter.
This country is white. We're Anglo-Saxon. You know what I mean? And
well, it used to be, yeah. I mean, you know, stuff changes, doesn't it?
We still are. The British white people, the gutless, they won't stand, they won't march, and they won't riot.
Well, you're not going to march for your whiteness, are you?
Well, no, march for our culture.
That bit makes sense.
The way we are. This is our life. What's the point of having 2 world wars against the Nazis for people to come in on the boat? You've got no paperwork. They're terrorists. They're carrying diseases. They don't like the country. They hate us. They're only here for the benefits.
Is Elon Musk going to sort this one out, Steve?
Well, of course he is. He's on our side. He's right-wing, and the right-wing is common.
Well, he's been a lifelong Democrat until half an hour ago.
Well, I don't know, anyway. I don't know. I mean...
Wait, kind of should.
I don't really care. If he funds reform, reform get in, and if reform... And the only thing I've got a problem with reform is that they might be like the rest. I don't know. They say all it is. When they're not in power, they say, give it all to God. Yeah, we'd do this.
Do you
get in power...
Do you think they're going to make the country whiter?
Well, to be honest, the only way to make the country white and British and English is to give the white women more pay women to stay at home and have 10 kids each, because we're being ethnic cleansed by foreigners. Whether you like it or not, whether you call that racist, it's a fact. It's the truth.
Well, I'm not being ethnically cleansed.
You're being ethnically cleansed?
No one's being ethnically cleansed.
Foreign families are having 6 kids, 5 kids to the British people...
Well, that might be true, but that's not ethnic cleansing.
Well, it might not be the right terminology. I'm not the most educated person.
No, you're sounding fine on that front, Steve. Listen, I do take your point. I tell you what your point does feed into. It is, and I think it's a good one, by the way, genuinely I do, and thank you, Steve, for making it, is the idea that there isn't a kind of central culture that we can celebrate without always having to stick a flipping apology on the back of it. I think you make a good point. Steve, thank you for that. I do understand that, and I think when, you know, there's been marches, there was a couple in the summer that went down to Parliament Square, completely peaceful, that kind of picked up on a little bit of this. And by the way, it's not even a white thing. There's plenty of black and brown people who would share exactly the sentiment that Steve was making there. I think when we have situations like the Batley school teacher, when we have situations like the Wakefield Quran story, where there was almost a Sharia court set up to deal with, and a press conference given by a politician, a copper, the poor mother having to beg for forgiveness because her son touched a religious book of utter make-believe if you're not a supporter of that faith. You know, it's just that is where the problem is. And that's a real problem. That's a real issue that people have let go, and they haven't done anything, you know, they haven't wanted to go there. So Steve might have had a bit of a clumsy way of going about it, but I think the central point about there being a culture that you can say, yeah, this is, what's wrong with this? There's nothing wrong with this at all. That's fine. Thank you, Steve, for that. 0344 499 1000. I think the Elon Musk connection that he was sort of trying to make was that Musk is about common sense prevailing. You know, a kid scuffs a Quran at school. Who gives a hoot? Who cares? That's it. End of story. Nobody should be called in, suspended, death threats. You know, shut up. Get in the bin, the lot of you. It's that. And the sort of Musk, Trump, Farage-like thinking it goes with that. It goes with the, this is nonsense. The world is upside down. I think that was where he was steering. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There is some breaking news from Liverpool Crown Court. There's been a pre-hearing in the Southport accused, Axel Radicubana, 18 years old, and at that at the pre-hearing, pleas of not guilty have been entered on behalf of him after he failed to reply when arraigned at Liverpool Crown Court on 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, following the death of 3 young girls in a knife attack. This was the Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. Earlier this year, the court case begins officially in January, but that is the state of play at a pre-hearing. Pleas of not guilty have been entered on the accused's behalf. This is Talk, 25 to 3 on the programme. There's a lot to get through, by the way, today. We are going to be speaking, we are going to be bringing in, of course, a brand new Voice of Doom at about 2:45, 10 to 3. It's a brand new one. Yesterday got one, didn't it? We'll have a new one on that. Now, Labour have been accused of hypocrisy after going back on their original vow to compensate women hit by increases in the state pension age. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall said the government would not pay a penny to the 3.8 million WASPy women who were told they would have to work 5 years longer to receive their pension. Let's speak to a spokesperson for the WASPy women. Debbie Despon is with us. Debbie, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. So just in a nutshell, for those who aren't familiar with the nuts and bolts of what has happened here, can you do us a kind of Janet and John style précis of how we got here and what happened?
Yes, it's about WASPy women who were born in the 1950s who, when they were very close to their retirement age, found that because the law had been changed and the state pension age had been increased, they would have to work up to an additional 6 years. So for me, it was 6 years, in fact, my increase of my state pension age. And that was fine. We're not opposed to the increase to the state pension age because it was to equalise it with men's.
Sure.
However, there was a lack of notice. The government didn't inform us properly. We complained about it and the government said, no, we did everything right. So in the end, we took out complaints of maladministration via the Ombudsman. And after a very intense 6-year process, the Ombudsman concluded that there had been maladministration, that women hadn't been informed properly, and that we should receive an apology and be compensated, a small amount of compensation compared to the amount of money that women won't have had.
What sort of notice was there, Debbie? Sorry to talk over you. What sort of notice was given then? What was the worst scenario from the person that was expecting to retire at this X amount of years from when they first found out? What was the sort of closest case?
Some women only received 12 months' notice, and it was determined by when you were born. So as the decade went along, people got more and more notice. So women at the beginning of the decade had a very quick increase. The ones in the middle had the fastest increase and the steepest rise, and then the ones at the end of the decade had the most notice. So we are, in fact, a bell group of women, if you'd like to describe.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there are certain. I was about to ask you that. I know there's a certain sort of subset within the group that have been hit worse than others within the group, if that's the right way to define it.
Yes, there are. And there's also another subset of women who are, because when the Ombudsman carried out his investigation, he only looked at 6 sample cases, and he concluded that the women in those 6 sample cases hadn't suffered a direct financial loss. Now, a direct financial loss could be a significant sum of money if a woman lost her home or lost paying into a pension scheme because she couldn't get back into work, or a variety of reasons like that. But for most women, the compensation sum would be a very modest sum, just to recognise the fact that the government had failed to inform us. But there might be another group of women who could make an application and say, look, I actually lost a huge amount of money, and here's the amount I lost.
Who was the government that first announced this was happening? How long ago does this go back?
Well, it was the Conservative governments who first started the increase to the state pension age. But of course, all the subsequent governments have all had the opportunity to make a change or to stop the damage. But instead of which, the coalition government added on an extra year. They accelerated it in 2011 and increased the state pension age.
So this goes back to John Major's government. Would that be right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
It is worth. A lot of people were hopeful that maybe a new Labour government would be the answer to this, and they would be sympathetic and they would understand. And people had every reason to think that this new government might well be on their side, because members of that government had said they were on their side. It's worth reminding us. I know you will have seen this, Debbie, already, but let's have a listen to what Angela Rayner had to say in opposition.
Well, the government failed the women who were born in the 1950s. They stole their pension, that contract, that agreement that they thought they had, and then accelerated it so that those women didn't have the chance to prepare for that. We said we'll right that injustice, and within the 5 years of the Labour government, we will compensate them for the money that they've lost. This is their money that they've had stolen off them, and it's completely unacceptable. And any government should act responsibly to these women who have looked after their children through that period. They're often looking after elderly relatives now, and they're a part of our society that have felt really unjust by the way they've been treated, and it's absolutely right that we deal with this issue.
So there it is, Debbie. That's fairly unequivocal stuff. Under a Labour government, we'll sort this one out, except one problem. They won't.
Well, I think if Keir Starmer has been listening to what Angela Rayner said, he'd be getting the wrong end of the stick, because she was implying that the Labour government were going to pay back years of lost state pension. Yeah. That wasn't what we're campaigning for. We never have campaigned for that. We're campaigning about the injustice by the lack of notice that women received. So, if women were claiming lost state pensions, for many women it could be £50,000 or £60,000. We've mourned that loss for years now. That's gone. We're not promising women that they're going to get their state pensions back. But we are saying that the government should comply with the conclusions of the Ombudsman, because the Ombudsman is the watchdog for the government.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that we have huge cross-party support, WASPI have always campaigned cross-party, and we will be working with those supportive MPs, and we'll be looking to Parliament to come back with a solution to this, because that's who the Ombudsman passed the job to, because he knew that the Department for Work and Pensions wouldn't do it.
Keir Starmer, of course, and the government argue that this is, it's too expensive. It's worth reminding ourselves of a moment at Prime Minister's Question Time. This did come up today. The Liverpool West Derby MP, Ian Byrne, raised the issue with Keir Starmer. Let's have a listen to that.
In my constituency of Liverpool West Derby, I have more than 5,000 women affected. And alongside a great many members in this House, I believe these women are owed compensation for the injustice done to them at the hands of the state. So will the Prime Minister give members the opportunity to vote on whether they believe WASPI women are owed compensation?
And the simple fact of the matter is, in the current economic circumstances, the taxpayer can't bear the burden of tens of billions of pounds in compensation. Well, they're chuntering away. In 14 years, they accelerated the changes and not once spoke about compensation.
So there it is, Debbie. Tens of billions of pounds, says the Prime Minister. I've got a feeling you're going to tell me he's misinformed on this.
Well, he is misinformed on that, because if we're talking about the level of compensation that the WASPI campaign are talking about, we're not talking about tens of millions of pounds. As we've said, it's a bell curve.
Billions, he said, I think.
Billions, yeah. Some women would be entitled to more, and some women would be entitled to less. But it's all about whether or not the Ombudsman is allowed to do their job, and whether the role of the Ombudsman has become redundant, because somehow now the government can say, well, we don't want to hear what you've got to say, therefore we're not going to listen to you. What does that say about democracy? That's all we as the public have to bring the government to account. And
just a final point, Debbie, where does this go now? Is this, do you have to roll over and say, look, we battled hard, we fought for this? I know people have differing views on these kind of stories, but regardless of that, are you guys done now? Is that it? You've taken it as far as you can go?
No, absolutely not. We haven't campaigned for 9 years to have the government just say, tough, move on. We will be speaking to our supportive MPs. There's an all-party parliamentary group that supports WASPI. We'll be asking them to see what action they can take in Parliament. It is a parliamentary issue, but we will at the same time be seeking legal advice, as WASPI have done at every stage in our process, to see whether there was anything wrong about the way this has come about.
There it is. Listen, Debbie, thank you for explaining as well. Good luck with the campaign. Debbie Despon, who is a WASPI spokesperson. I get it. Look, I agree with Julia that there was always a curious, certainly in contemporary terms, curious injustice about blokes working to 65, women working to 60. You've got to draw the line somewhere. Their contention, not unreasonably, is the amount of notice that was given was inadequate, and therefore that, that breaches good governance. I think I'm sort of summing that up more or less in terms of what she said, not looking for tens of billions of pounds, as Keir Starmer suggested. And, of course, Angela Rayner was just one of many Labour politicians that said, we're going to sort this out, don't worry, we've got your back. And it will be seen as another kick to pensioners from this government. They've already removed the fuel allowance, they've already knackered the farmers in terms of one aspect of their business, and now they're failing to get involved in a campaign that's gone on for decades, it seems. They're having a great time over there, aren't they, at Labour HQ? Tony makes this point, by the way. We were talking about Reform and Elon Musk. He says, Reform are here to destroy the uni party, not join them. There will be no pacts. Wait and see. Well, I can tell you, having, off-the-record discussions with some people, if there was a pact and the mood music was, or if there was the potential of a pact and the mood music felt right, remember, there's 4.5 years to go, then I don't think either party, Tories or Reform, would have much of a choice. But that largely depends on the economic background. We might... Look, we've got all this stuff going on. I hate to say this, all these terrible headlines about Labour. They're far worse than anybody thought they might be. There is a theory, and this makes it sound like someone designed it this way. They ain't clever They're not that clever. They're getting all the bad news out the way first, and then come next year, the sunny uplands will return, the economy will grow. See, inflation went up again, by the way. The economy will grow, and life will be good. And fast forward 2 or 3 years, and all of these things will be a bad dream. And, people will go, do you know what? We're doing all right, so let's keep it as it is. I don't think that's going to happen. But if it does, if there is a momentum of positivity in the country, which at the moment you can't envisage, then Reform's confidence, or the Conservatives' confidence, will be in a very different place. And that will be when they would... Reform at the moment could not go it alone. You could not overturn that amount of... no matter how much you might hate Starmer. Not a law of physics, as I always say. You could, technically, but in all likelihood, you probably wouldn't, because there is a lot of support for Reform, but there's a lot of people who can't stand Nigel Farage and Reform, and it's that group that they've also got to try and win over. They're not worried about die-hard socialists. They never win them over, but there is a big old chunk elsewhere, red wall seats and beyond. So it just depends on where we are in 3 years' time. So you can't really call it just yet, but I know that certainly talking to Tories off the record, they have... there are some who are absolutely agitating, if the circumstances are right, to get into bed, because they can't see any other way of winning, and they believe neither can reform. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And Tony says, Errol Musk, this is Elon's dad, who we spoke to earlier, told you that Elon is entitled to a British passport, his nan being from Liverpool. Simple. Would he be? I don't know how that works. I know that a lot of people who have Irish lineage, so I can't do it because it's a great-grandmother link, but I think I could do, if my nan had been Irish, I would be able to apply for an Irish. So some people are doing that because they want the EU thing, so they can travel at greater ease when they're off to Marbs for a summer holiday or a bit of a powwow down Ibiza way. Just makes it a bit quicker at the airport when you want to come home after you've thrown a whitey after 3 nights out on the Terps. So I get it. But I don't know how it works. So if your nan was, would you be entitled to? Maybe you would. Perhaps you would. Will Elon Musk become a Brit? Maybe he will. Shall we do the Voice of Doom just before we go back to the calls? Don't go away, Ian or Mark, with you in a second, guys. Voice of Doom, brand new voice. Yesterday's got one, didn't it? This is the mystery voice with a political underpin to it. Think politics. Here's the question. Who is this?
I believe that so strongly.
Now, I know who it is, and I've forgotten who it is, and I can't even... Oh, yes, that's who it is, yeah. Have another listen.
I believe that so strongly.
Who is that? Do not call. There is no prize. You can, however, message in if you fancy joining in on 87222. If we get an answer inside the next 10 or 15 minutes, we will reveal all on the other side of the news at 3. If we don't get an answer, it rolls over to tomorrow. What I want is a Christmas-New Year combination rollover, so we don't restart this until 2025. Have a listen to the voice again.
I believe that so strongly.
I think that's doable, frankly. Do you? 87222 if you want to have a crack at that. Let's go to Ian down in London. On the waspy women, Ian, what are your thoughts on this? Hi.
Hi, Ian. Me again. I'll tell you something. What I can't understand, like before the election, they all sat down around a table and they said, right, what's going to be our sort of things to go for? What are we going to say on the doorstep? And one of the things was this waspy thing, correct? And like they knew even then, as they keep saying with Rachel Reeves, you know, of a magic black hole.
Yes.
Right? We've got this magic black hole. Oh yeah, but we're still going to give 10 billion or whatever it is to these women. Well, wait a minute. If you're saying you've got a 10 billion pound black hole, how can you say you want to do that? It's an out and out lie.
Yeah.
But they sort of said you've got a black hole, but we can give the train drivers the money. And don't worry, they're just going to wait for a couple of weeks, then they'll go on strike.
We can give 50. We can give 50 mil to Syria. We can give God knows how much to climate change projects around the world. We can do all of that.
But with what you're saying, truly, I don't think they are that clever that think, oh, yeah, we'll get all the bad news out today, but tomorrow it's going to be better.
It's going to be better. I agree. I think they're going to be the first party in history, certainly that they've had no honeymoon period, and I sense that all the bad smell and feeling they've created in 6 months is going to hang around them for the next 4.5 years.
Maybe not being funny, and I don't mean to be disparaging to one of your callers, it's all the seeding in the clouds.
Do you know it is? It's sent people. It's sent people going. People have gone crazy, right? Listen, great call, Ian. Thank you for that. Michelle says Nigel Farage had a pact with the Conservatives in 2019. It won't happen again. No, I'm not talking about a pact. I'm talking about a merger. Not one of those, you stand in those seats, but we won't stand in these if you don't stand in that. I don't think it'll be that. I'm talking about a merge. I'm talking about you get together and form one party, of which Nigel Farage would be the leader. Kemi Badenoch would be no more. The Tories will not survive with Kemi Badenoch, based on what we're seeing at the moment. It's early days. And I'd stand corrected, because I'd said for the last year or so that she would be the right person to run the party. For a whole raft of reasons, I think she'll make it work, and at the moment, she hasn't really. Mark's in Lincolnshire. Back to Elon Musk. Mark, is he the Messiah?
Well, I don't think he's the Messiah, Ian.
Maybe he is.
You're talking to a Christian, that's blasphemy to me.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people said that the Messiah, the Messiah or the devil will return at some point in our lives, and they will come in the form of someone, offering and bearing gifts. So maybe it's Elon.
He'll be, well, if you want to get all biblical, Satan will be sent down in a bolt of light, is what it says, and it will appear it will be a beast of many heads. Now that could be anything. That could be a corporation. It could be, you know, some people might want to view that as globalists or something.
So it could be Tesla.
It's all up to interpretation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But what it does say, the interesting thing...
Could be Tesla. I mean, those cars have got horns, haven't they? So there's a clue.
Well, there you could be onto something, Ian. I mean, the interesting thing is what you were saying there originally about that, is that it does also say that he or they should be worshipped as a god or something.
Yeah.
So there you go. You know.
Well, maybe we're onto something. So Elon Musk is the Antichrist.
Well, that's the biblical depiction. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that.
I'd like to think so.
Well, you know, you have your end of the whole end of days bit's actually quite, you know, it's quite a chunky little bit. In the Bible.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Don't even get into marks of the beast and all that business. But broadly,
you know, actually for this story with Elon Musk.
Yes, I was going to say, on the face of it, is he a force for the good?
Yes, I think. You know, nobody seems to have many issues with people like George Soros funding political movements in the UK.
And initiatives, but not parties as such. That's maybe the difference. And he's not a member of any government.
You know, that's questionable. I mean, I think there are some MPs that have had funding from him in the past.
Perhaps, yeah. Maybe that's true. But he doesn't. I mean, he would say, "Look, I'm a an entrepreneur and a man that throws out the cash when I see a worthy cause, but I don't represent a political party." Whereas Musk does.
The point I'm making is these things do happen. I don't think there's much relevance in the fact that he's kind of that representative, if you know what I mean.
Got it. I hear what you're saying. Mark, listen, I must move on that point. Here's the voice of doom.
I believe that so strongly.
Who's that? Maybe we'll tell you on the other side of the news at 3, which is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome to the home of common sense. We move into this hour. Lots to get through. Load of comment coming in from you. We are discussing Elon Musk, apparently ready to bankroll Nigel Farage and reform UK. Some are saying up to $100 million, although that can't fully be confirmed. Can he single-handedly overthrow Labour and the Tories to finally shake up British politics? We've had some cracking calls on this. We'll continue in that vein in this section. Also this afternoon, 3,500 police jobs could be cut after Rachel Reeves's tax grabs threatens funding for cops. This is a party, again, that said, no, the last lot, they mucked it all up for the police. We're going to make it all better. It's not a good start, right? We'll come to that in a few moments. And potholes are causing chaos on our roads with a staggering backlog of repairs hitting a cost of £16.3 billion. Despite record spending, only a fraction, tiny fraction, of minor roads are getting the care they need. More on that throughout the course of this hour as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Just before we speak to Peter Blexley, we did the Voice of Doom before the news. Have a listen to the voice. This is day one of the new voice. Here it is.
I believe that so strongly.
Who is that? These are some of the wrong answers. Ed Davey, no. John Major, no. Michael Howard, Matthew Parris, neither of those. Neither was it Peter Mandelson, Hilary Benn or Nick Clegg. In fact, nobody got it correct, which means we have what is called in the trade a rollover. So this time tomorrow we will repeat the exercise and maybe we'll get a win. Maybe it will roll over till 2025. We're looking for one of those rollovers that goes on for weeks. That's how it's kind of meant to happen, right? Find out tomorrow at around about the same time. Now, police forces across the UK could face cuts of up to 3,500 officers next year, despite a £1 billion funding boost. But with rising costs, including £230 million hike in national insurance, the gap remains huge. Now, let's break down the impact of these financial pressures and what it means for law enforcement. With us, Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective, all-round good bloke, and now fully retired from work. Hello, Peter.
Good job I'm sat this side of the desk, Mr. Collins.
We had a conversation just off air when I said to Peter, in fact, did I say semi-retirement?
You did.
Or part retirement?
Yes,
because I know you're still doing stuff, and then you talked me through your day, and it was busier than mine.
Well, there you go.
And I know I'm not digging holes for a living, but yeah, you're never off, really.
Retirement can wait, fortunately.
Retirement can wait. This is interesting, isn't it, this story, because, of course, we know under the Tories, under Theresa May, 20,000 officers went. They have sort of been... They've recruited, I think, another 20,000, but they've lost at the other end, where people have dropped out early or haven't replaced those that have retired. So there's still a big recruitment problem within the police.
There is. Policing is in crisis.
Yeah.
That's unavoidable.
Yeah.
And where this article says there could be job losses, there will be police officer roles lost. Because whilst we have Dame Diana Johnson and Yvette Cooper and Rachel Reeves saying that there's going to be £1 billion for policing, what they fail to mention is the £230 million in national insurance. But also, this year, police officers were awarded an inflation-busting 4.75% pay rise. And that is going to swallow up a vast amount of money. About 85% of policing budgets goes on wages. You'd think it'd be police cars and police stations and other headquarters and all of that.
It's on wages.
The majority of it goes on officer wages and staff wages. And so, of course, one pay rise has an enormous impact. And the bottom line is, politicians' talk is cheap, policing is expensive.
Yeah, it certainly is. This lot said, this government, this Labour government, we'll look after the police. They attacked, rightly so, they attacked the Tories in opposition, saying, you cannot lose that amount of cops from our streets without there being a price to pay. And we saw the problem that it's caused the police over the years. It's been significant, it's been troubling, it's been huge, it's been criminal, frankly, what has happened to the police. But for this to now be a problem under Labour is going to be uncomfortable for Labour, right?
Yes, but of course we know that this government is pretty much slashing and burning wherever it can. Because, of course, money is very tight and beyond government. Just speaking to people that I meet in my everyday business and friends, you know, money for so many millions of people is very tight.
Sure.
And I don't see that the police are going to get a huge amount of additional funding from anywhere anytime soon, and consequently that will mean fewer officers, and we have crime increasing pretty much across the board, across all offences. Our streets are becoming increasingly lawless, unfortunately. We're all in a bit more danger. We all need to protect ourselves so that we do not become victims of crime, because with the state of so many of our police services, some in special measures, including the Met, that has been in what they call the engage process for a very long time, victims of crime are being fundamentally failed. The public are being failed, and something quite dramatic needs to be done.
Indeed. One Chief Constable, Norfolk Chief Constable Paul Sanford, warning that the government's focus on neighbourhood policing could limit investment in other critical areas, potentially leading to cuts across forces. I mean, that is always going to be the balance, isn't it? Where do you focus? You know, the Labour Party have made a great deal of saying, you know, want to get back to neighbourhood policing. I mean, every government has said it for years. Well, Bobby's on the beat, that kind of thing. If there is too much of a focus there, his contention is that then you lose elsewhere.
And that Chief Constable's specialised brief is policing finance. He knows what he's talking about. And only last week we had Yvette Cooper, and the week before Keir Starmer, claiming credit for 13,000 new police officers going into neighbourhood policing. And I have no hesitation in saying that was fundamentally untrue. Break that 13,000 down. About a quarter of them, 3,000, if they can recruit them, because recruiting and retaining police officers is a massive problem at the moment, they will be new cops, 3,000 or thereabouts. 3,000 will be police community support officers who have the same powers of arrest as you and I. A quarter of those cops will be existing officers who will be seconded away from their current roles, and the final quarter is going to be special constables who are volunteers who do 4 hours a week. So it was an incredibly misleading headline.
Audacious one as well, I think we can say. A couple of other police stories around as well. Donna Jones is Hampshire's Police and Crime Commissioner, calling for a complete review of the recording of non-crime hate incidents, saying police should not investigate incidents that are not crimes.
And I concur. Donna Jones and I have not always seen eye to eye, and we've had some very lively public debates when we've been diametrically opposed into how we think policing should be done. But in this situation, she is right. This whole non-crime hate incident recording has got the police in a dreadful pickle, because the guidelines that have come out of the College of Policing have really not been clear and concise. There is an absence of legislation, and too often our police are dealing with people's feelings, dealing with people who have been offended by something they've heard or something they've seen. And it's actually not a crime to offend somebody. It might be unpleasant, and if there is a fear or a risk that there is an escalation of matters, that it could lead to something more serious, then yes, I understand the police might need to intervene. But at the moment, with the current regulations as they are, there is too much confusion, the guidance is not clear, and I agree the police need to stick to crime.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it, that every time we see one of these stories, you think, you know, surely there's more to it. It can't just be that the police knocked on somebody's door because they put something on Facebook. And then you see some of the evidence, you go, no, they really did. In some of these cases, I mean, there's one classic, I think it was the guy that put messed around with the rainbow flag, I think the story was, if you remember. And I think the cop at the scene actually says to him, you've caused somebody anxiety.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and we saw it.
Yeah, there's like half a dozen cops there.
Yeah, we saw a video clip of that police officer.
Exactly that.
When the person who's having the handcuffs slapped on says, what am I being arrested for? and the cop says you caused somebody anxiety.
I mean, what the... Yeah.
It is not a crime. In fact, actually, the police need to grasp the nettle that really they should be causing anxiety to criminals. That's their job.
But is it because you've got... Is there a deeper problem, Peter? You know, you've got a lot of, you know, or you've got some chief constables that might have come through a very accelerated process. They've come from a different sort of political mindset where they are very sort of susceptible to understanding sort of sensitive issues. You've got the College of Policing who are really behind this, this policy. You put it all together and you've got this sort of inevitable... desire to, and in fact Keir Starmer even said it, to collect data on people's views, because you might, well, it might not be an offence to cause somebody anxiety, but if we know that Mick Smithers has got previous on, you know, saying things about the pride flag, then we know where to knock next time there's an issue. I mean, this is outrageous, but is that what's happening here, do you think?
I'm all for intelligence gathering. And unfortunately, this has been eroded in the last couple of decades. For example, if there is a particular person who holds deep, entrenched, homophobic or racist or whatever other unsavoury views they are, then it's a good job if the police know about that person.
That's fair.
And they log what they know. So that if, for example, a crime was committed and it's believed to be motivated by some form of hatred whatsoever, and the description of that person matches the person on whom there has been some intelligence gathered, then it might be easier to potentially detect an offender. That's how policing was done in the old days. Then it became out of fashion, frowned upon, and consequently largely disappeared. But back to your earlier salient points about policing and chief constables and the promotion process and all of that. Unfortunately, policing for the last couple of decades has been in the grip of academia. So many universities, the length and breadth of the country, have got policing departments with doctors of policing, professors of policing, and the most danger these people have ever faced is getting a paper cut. They've not served on frontline policing. They're inexperienced, and as they have these hordes of police officers going through their universities, there is an element of brainwashing. And so much of it is fluffy, liberal, wokerati, which is unsuitable for policing, which most of the time is a pretty messy job, requires courageous people because you're dealing with crooks.
And you had a few, you know, interesting characters running the Met over the years, you know, that might have fallen into that category. Some other chiefs around there. What was his name? The fellow that was he became a Lib Dem. He was even on the I'm a Celebrity Jungle show.
Oh, my
Brian Paddock.
Brian Paddock, yes.
Brian Paddock. Do you remember, he was the fellow that said don't take dogs around like areas like Brixton. Because, you know, some people culturally don't like
sensitivities.
Sensitive, all of that kind of thinking.
He was at the forefront and the very beginning of the wokerati infecting policing, and he now sits in the Lords.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does indeed. Lord Paddock.
Lord Paddock. What was his name? Blair, who was the chief.
Ian Blair.
Ian Blair.
Yeah.
Was he all right?
Boris Johnson got rid of him when Boris Johnson was the Mayor of London. And that was really the first very public falling out that we'd seen between a mayor and a Met Commissioner. And Johnson decided he wanted to get rid of him. And by crikey, he did. Now, there are some things that Blair did that actually had some merit.
This is Ian Blair.
Ian Blair, yes, I do beg your pardon, yes. So Ian Blair. But he did very much come from the Oxbridge-educated elite and brought a lot of that baggage with him. Not
then
all
again,
of
so did Boris. Maybe that was the problem.
Yeah, but quite possibly. But, you know, policing at its basic level is a simple task. It does have complexities within it, but you need courage, you need common sense, and you need to be a communicator.
And final one here, Peter. A watchdog report has found that police were unprepared for the scale of violence following the Southport knife attacks, with intelligence failing to predict the unrest. I mean, there's been disorder before, but we know that following what happened in July, riots spread across the UK, 600 arrests, lots of mobs targeting mosques and asylum accommodation. There were hundreds of police officers injured in this, which is, you know, a big factor in this story. But the police were just unprepared for the scale of it. But how do you know what the scale of it's going to be? I know intelligence gathering is one thing, but you can be caught off guard.
This is the key to experienced police officers. What you learn as you go through that job, in whatever rank it is, what you should learn is the ability to see round the corner. That is the most important thing. And fundamentally here, those senior police officers, the length and breadth of the country, who are on huge salaries, who have all gone to universities, who all promote their own type, are responsible here for the main criticisms that come out of this report by the Inspectorate of Constabulary. And those three main criticisms are that the capacity and capability to respond to widespread violent disorder came up way, way short of what it should have been. That they've got to draw up new plans for how they mobilise their public order and protection services, basically, so the public order cops with the riot shields and all of that. And lastly, in the recommendations, and I actually think if I had had anything to do with this, this would have been at the top of the list and not the bottom of it, is the well-being support for police officers and staff. There's an expression in policing that says well-being is merely a poster on the wall, and that's why so many cops are committing suicide, leaving the service and getting disgruntled. It's a challenging job, and those people who volunteer to do it need to be supported properly, robustly, but properly.
100%. Peter, thank you. Great to have you with us, as ever. Enjoy retirement. Former top cop Peter Bleksley with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to your calls and comments. Alan in Bournemouth says Donald Trump's mother was from Scotland. Perhaps he's also entitled to a British passport. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, literally, that would be about as close a link as you can get. I would suggest he absolutely would be. Could you do it through your grandparents? Would Elon Musk be entitled to it? Apparently his nan was from Liverpool, which I didn't know, by the way. Betty says, enjoying the show, no issue with Elon or Twitter when it supported the left. One here from Paul, the beast of many heads could mean compulsive liar Starmer. Yeah, although would the biblical revelation have given us Keir Starmer as the devil incarnate? I do wonder. One in from Rob in Lincolnshire. I don't care at all what Musk, Farage or anyone else does to change our political landscape, so long as it means that this abhorrent Labour government will be removed from office at the first opportunity, which is exactly as we felt about the Conservative government in the last few years. I don't know what has changed. If you look at what is happening in Germany at the moment, they've got elections coming up at the beginning part of next year. No confidence in Scholz over there. If you look at what is happening in France, I mean, the two big powerhouses of Europe absolutely falling apart at the seams. I mean, this is just extraordinary. But is it a desire for the same kind of... is it a... OK, let's turn it on its head. Is it because there is a sense of parties, political parties, mainstream status quo parties, simply singing from the same hymn sheet and just not addressing the stuff that bugs the life out of us, bothers us, concerns us for our kids, whether it's gender-based issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's just basic common sense. And I think that's the nearest you can get, really. It is a point of common sense, I think. You know, Starmer and Cooper, they're not on board on the immigration debate. They hardly say a peep about what's happening across the channel. You don't get anything from these characters. And then you get into sort of gender madness, although Wes Streeting has made some progress in puberty blockers and the like, but it's kind of all of that stuff. And maybe it's accelerated in our minds if you look at social media, if you listen to debates, and they are everywhere, particularly here. Then maybe we do run away with the idea that everybody is talking about this stuff, and maybe everybody isn't. I don't know. I think enough people are for there to be a change, and there needs to be a change. Martin is in Nottingham. You're an ex-cop, Martin, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah, good show, by the way.
Thank you very much. What are your thoughts?
I just want to take up a little bit on what Peter was saying.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not always the Met. There's 120,000 other offices outside the Met. So yeah, let's look at that. So that's my first point.
Yeah.
The second point is there's 80,000 people being banged up tonight. Now, they didn't give themselves up. That was a lot of hard work by a lot of good officers.
Yes.
And the third thing is, one of my lads is a serving police sergeant, and he went out on his own volition 2 nights ago to rescue a vulnerable person.
Okay.
Unfortunately, later died. So what I want to say is, there's a lot of good work being done there, and when he goes on about degrees, I was a serving copper for 30 years on the streets with a degree. My lads have got a degree. We're not all idiots just because we've got a degree. In fact, we're 3 cops.
No, I think there is the kind of metropolitan elite type character I think Blexley was really referring to. The Ian Blair era. You remember him?
Yes, I do. I remember all of them. They're decent. They are decent people, though. Just because they've got a degree.
I know exactly. What's your degree in, Martin? And then we can make a better judgment.
It's
not needlework, is it?
No, it's a science degree, and my lad was in the media, you know. So
there you go. You've got all bases. In fact, the media degree is quite useful in the police at the moment. I was doing a function for the police, and I was talking to a copper she was from Essex Constabulary, and she said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I told her what I did, and she said, "Oh, I better not talk to you." I said, "But I'm working for the I'm here working for the police today. I'm not, she said, I'm not going anywhere near you, mate. And she didn't want a conversation with me. So maybe that's a good approach for police these days, not to talk to people like me.
Well, yeah, but, you know, the press have always helped us out over the years, and I can't knock them too much because my brother-in-law was the editor, night editor of the Daily Express, so I can't really knock them.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I might even know him, or of him, certainly. Listen, Martin, thank you very much indeed. Martin in Nottingham, reference the police. This one comes in from Alex, who says, Ian, I'd love to know how much money Labour receives from far-left beneficiaries and other lefty lobby nutters. This is why we're in such a mess with all this woke nonsense. Musk is just creating some balance for once, says Alex in Huddersfield. Oh, I'm sure they do, but they also, I mean, Labour got a lot of money from big business this year as well, of course. Now, Dale Vince, for example, he's a left-wing environmentalist. He's a green entrepreneur. He owns a big company. He is one of the biggest donators to the Labour Party. He got all sorts of hassle for doing that. But, of course, he's British, and that's the big difference. And, again, with the Tories, you can see, you know, mysterious people, as a caller mentioned earlier, being elevated to the House of Lords. You know, some Russian, you know, what's his name, Lebedev and others that have found themselves clad in ermine, courtesy of, you know, Boris Johnson or whoever. So it does happen on all sides. The debate here is really, well, it's kind of twofold. It's whether you allow any foreign national to be donating to a British political party. Now, of course, it's happened in the past, and it's happened surreptitiously and probably through one company via another one, etc. It might amount to the same thing. What marks out Musk's appearance on this scene, and it wouldn't be the same if he wasn't about to go and work for Donald Trump, is precisely that. So you have somebody from the Trump administration. It's not a hugely senior role, but it's significant. And it's very much, I mean, the optics are that, you know, he's very much associated with it, him and others. So what marks it out is that somebody from Trump's administration is cozying up to another political, not the party of government, another political party. And I think that's the game changer. And it might suit us at some level to go, yeah, but it's Elon Musk. The guy talks common sense. He's a good guy, right? He's good, so that's okay. But would we be okay if it was a Chinese businessman who was trying to donate 100 million quid to the Liberal Democrats, who also happen to be an MP, thinking that's a bit weird? Shouldn't he be talking to the government, not an opposition party? That's the kind of bone of contention I sense. Stephen is in Fife. What do you got for us, Stephen? Hi.
Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Just been listening throughout the day about Musk and Trump and Keir Starmer, etc. Personally, I would welcome Musk's donations to the Reform Party if it's allowed.
Mm-hmm.
I think if that was to go ahead, Keir Starmer will sit up and take notice of Elon Musk's donations to the Reform Party.
Quite possibly.
When Nigel Farage having close links to Musk and to Trump, and Trump just coming out of Canada, and then a couple of days later, Trudeau's deciding he's going to resign.
Yeah.
Not that there's any truth in it, is he's got a sway in that. So I think that if this donation does go ahead, in which I think it can legally through certain streams, I mean, if Musk was to donate it through his British company X, I think it can be allowed. Or if he applied to be a British citizen, he could also be allowed to donate to the party, not as a politician, as a businessman.
Yes, indeed. I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? I mean, Linda says, you know, he's doing this openly. And by the way, he hasn't said he's going to give 100 million. I mean, that's just something that was a figure that was rumoured. But Linda says, you know, it's above board, unlike Soros or Gates, who fund things underhand. I don't know if there's any... I've never heard of any evidence of it being underhand, because they're also quite public in what they fund, because they have a charity organisation that has to account for it. But they're not linked to a party, right? That's the difference, Stephen. If you are linked to a party, then that's the game changer.
I can see where Musk's coming from. I mean, like what they're going to do, hopefully, in the next 4 years to change America. I hope that the two of them come to Britain and speak to Mr. Stammer and make him see some sense, because he's running the UK into the ground, and people are eventually going to have enough, and there's going to be something's going to happen in this country because people will just not take it anymore. That's my opinion.
Got it. Stephen, great call. Thank you. Stephen in Fife. Back to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. That's where we are. We'll have more calls in just a couple of ticks' time. Lots to get through, Jeremy. Kyle's here at 4, of course, on Drive, and we'll return to your calls and messages next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I love Kevin O'Sullivan's Political Asylum. It is just perfect. You're at home, you're cooking, you're having a beer, you're cooking dinner. The kids are going a little nuts. I can get some sanity from Kev, who's always himself going a little nuts over stuff. Incredulity runs through him like a bloodstream. And it's a great listen. It's back tonight at 7 o'clock right here on Talk. Now, let's go to this story. Who doesn't love a pothole story? There are plenty of them out there. Here's no exception. Potholes causing chaos on our roads. A staggering backlog of repairs hitting a cost of 16.3 billion. I mean, I'm not making this up. The number is absolutely huge. Despite record spending, only a tiny fraction of minor roads are getting the care they need. We'll talk about the state of local roads now, the government response, and why experts are calling for a tech-driven fix with Laura Laker, journalist and author of Potholes and Pavements. Here's the thing, Laura, and good afternoon to you, by the way. You know, when you were first thinking a career in journalism is one I quite fancy, you know, it sounds there's a lot of elements to it. I can do all sorts of things. Did you think you'd be writing a book about potholes?
Well, no. I actually I studied nutrition. I was going to be a dietitian.
Oh, there you go.
And then, I thought I might write about nutrition. And then I realised, actually, that what affects our health in a profound way is how we get around each day. And I realised that, you know, you can impact people's health by incorporating active transport, things like walking and cycling, into our everyday lives. And, you know, we're so busy, a lot of us don't want to go to the gym, we don't have time to do exercise, or you were not in the habit of doing that. And one great way of changing that is to give people the option, you know, kind of safe routes to walk and cycle. And so I went on a quest around the UK to look at the National Cycle Network and to look at what the kind of national infrastructure for walking and cycling is like at the moment, and then what it would take to kind of make a proper network of routes. So this would be things like separated cycle paths, as well as safe local roads that we're here to talk about today.
So
and one thing I did find was, the state of the local roads. They are in a very poor condition in a lot of places.
They are
and,
indeed.
When you're driving, that can be very damaging for your vehicle. We know that there's something like a £1.7 billion in vehicle repairs every year caused by potholes and poor road surface. But when you're on a bicycle, the implications of hitting a pothole are quite severe, and they can result in hospitalisation or even worse.
They are absolutely massive. So nutrition is what you fill your body with. Potholes is what you fill the hole with. So there is a little... there's something very tenuous in the Venn diagram I've just created there.
Or some people's Christmas cake.
Yes, indeed. Well, there was a fellow that filled them with flowers. You might have seen that story a little about a year ago that prompted the local authority to spring into action because he put flowers and it drew attention to the potholes, which was a novel way of doing it. The fact is, if you go over one, I mean, if you go on over one on a bike, then that's, you could be in real trouble because it'll have you off the bike, it could throw you in front of a car, it could cause real damage. Even I went over one in my neck of the woods recently, Laura. I swear I thought an earthquake had began. It was so deep and my wheel just happened to catch it. It was a 20-mile-an-hour zone, so no speed was involved in the process. No one else was on the road. I thought, this is it. This is how I end my days, in an earthquake in Sevenoaks in my car. Turns out it wasn't an earthquake. It was just a flipping pothole that nobody had bothered to fill, despite it looking like something you could fill with water and call it a lake. I mean, some of these things are massive, right? I mean, we're not talking about little holes in the road.
No, exactly. And, councils have a legal obligation to fill them in, but the fact is they don't have the money to. And over about 10 years, budgets for transport have obviously gone down. Local spending on roads has gone down. And there's something like £3 billion a year needed to repair the roads. Patching isn't going to work for much longer. And I think councils are in a really difficult position because, we've got more traffic on the road, buses will cut, the train service is very unreliable, and so people are forced into their cars. Cars have gotten bigger, about 25% bigger over the last 7 years. And we know that because of just the way that physics works, that means a 4 times that increase in the pressure on the roads. That's 100% increase in the pressure on the roads, and that's causing them to crack, extreme weather, flooding, heat waves, all of that. And so, we're in a perfect storm, really, of poor road condition, and something needs to be done about it. Transport, as I've discovered, is crucial to our lives. It's crucial to socialising, to getting to work, to be able to get to job opportunities and to get to school. And so we really need to think long term about transport, and the government's been talking about that. Thinking about things in long term, because we haven't historically been very good at that in this country. And it's crucial because you can't just plan a couple of years ahead. Even if you're building an extension on your house, you need to know the money's there in 5-10 years time, of course, to pay it off. So it's something does need to change, and urgently.
I was staggered to read that only when it comes to minor roads, only 2.5% of minor roads throughout England and Wales received maintenance last year. I mean, I mean, to say it's not just woeful, it's almost criminal.
No, it really is. It really is. And we rely on these, in rural areas, the road is the kind of the way that you get around. We don't have a great train network, the buses aren't that great. And so we are having to, rely on the roads. And if we can't rely on those, then, it does have an impact on our day-to-day lives and the economy and our health.
Indeed. But of course, the reality which we began this conversation with, Laura, was really the financial one. Collectively, councils would need 16.3 billion quid just to play catch-up.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate that we've had, 10 years of just cutting local transport budgets, local council budgets, and it's on the face of it, it's saving money, but actually we're all paying the price for this now in a lack of services and in our insurance premiums. And so something does need to change, and someone needs to spend some money on it, because we do realise it's crucial infrastructure.
And we've got lots of big, organisations like the RAC, I mean, they've picked up on this. I know this is sort of, in their brief to comment on this, but they're warning that the current repair methods are insufficient and a tech-led approach is needed to address worsening conditions. Now, do you sense, and you may or may not know the answer, Laura, but is that about identifying them, that we need tech, or is it about how we repair them? Because whatever they're sticking down those potholes, because we know that old trick as well. I mean, I've essentially got balsa wood in some of the things near where I live, and I think that just paper mache in one of them was discovered. I mean, this is not good. So what is it we need to do to make it better?
Well, we need to invest. And that's the thing. I mean, we've got government after government talks about infrastructure, investing in infrastructure. And it's very, very tempting, I think, to see a technological solution and to think a technology is going to save us, an app's going to save us, a bot's going to save us. But we can see with our own eyes where the holes are. We just need to have a kind of, a sensible approach to it and start to repair the roads in a strategic way so that people can get around without fear of, damaging their vehicle or damaging themselves. And so I don't necessarily think it's a tech solution. I think we need to invest in the infrastructure.
Just need to fill a pothole, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about. Everyone's going to, what do we do? How do we solve it? Fill the pothole. That's what you do. But of course, we know that the amount out there that need filling is huge and growing. Listen, Laura, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. That is Laura Laker, journalist and author of Potholes and Pavements. And she's bang on. Isn't it indicative of... I mean, it's a real symbol of where we're at in the 21st century. I lived in Spain for a bit. When I was about 19, I went to Spain, down there on the Costa, and did work, around hotels, bit of DJing, that kind of stuff, and it was great. But Spain was just coming out of the kind of the era and into discovering capitalism and the like, and so it was a place that needed a lick of paint, put it that way. Where we lived, or where I lived, was in Torremolinos, and we were regulars down there. I mean, Finn, our producer, he likes to talk about his trips to Marbella, but, I was on the guest list at those bars. I used to walk into those things as a young buck. In I would go, heads would turn, who is this character? Who's this charming young man from England? So I knew this terrain really well, and I got to know it, and I used to drive around there, and some of the back roads, if you're sort of going to Torremolinos along that main road, which ultimately takes you to Gibraltar, but there's back roads you can do like any place, you can pass Benalmádena, or you can actually go round the back, and all the roads were horrific. I mean, it was a joke. We used to joke about, whatever you do, don't go down there. And if you do, you have to drive at about half a mile an hour because it was so bad. That's what our roads look like now. And a couple of years ago, I went back and I did the memory lane thing because I was down there just for a bit of a weekend break. And I thought, I'm going to drive around some of that place. It was beautiful. It had all been sorted. All of these knackered old roads that haven't been touched because the Marxist governments that were in power, etc. They'd all gone. Everything was fine. It was all tickety-boo. All these sort of junkyard areas had all been done up. I know various areas do get their moment when they are given that lick of paint and they return to a semblance of normality. But I just thought, what a compare and contrast that there we were in the sort of late 80s, 90s with this place absolutely hopeless and us thinking, wow, we come from a lovely, we can drink water from our taps in the UK. We can swim in our rivers in the UK. Oh, down here in southern Spain, can't do any of that. There's muck all over the place. The roads are in disrepair. Great culture, great people, but the infrastructure was absolutely on its knees. And now we've turned this around. I mean, it's just extraordinary. We have what they had 30 years ago, and that is criminal. And it isn't getting any better either. Apparently they've got no money to do anything. What's happened, by the way? What has happened? When years ago, I was thinking about this today, where I used to live in Ashford. I'm not going down and doing my whole autobiography here, but there's a sense in this that feeds into exactly what Laura, our last guest, was just saying. There's a couple of little pubs on the high street that won't exist anymore, I'm pretty sure. How did they survive then, when there was less of a drinking culture, less of a social scene, but they existed? How did we manage? How did little businesses manage to exist? I know we didn't have the internet in the same way, or didn't have the internet at all initially. So that's the obvious component. How did we fill potholes then, but not now? We can't do it. What the hell has happened? Is it just more money, or has everyone just got lazy and doesn't give a fig about the place we live in? 0344 499 1000.
Is solidarity with the Baltic states in case Russia decides to invade them.
I know we've got solidarity, and you know that's really lovely. But I'm sorry, you've got to. You know, this was a major policy decision that was taken, a major betrayal. Kiston was not even in the country when these. You know, and he knows. The people around him know about this narrative of never hear Keir.
Right.
I mean, I genuinely don't understand what he thinks he's doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. 10 to 4. Back to your calls. This will be Jason in Sheffield. On Elon Musk, Jason, what are we making of Mr. Musk and his billions of dollars that he may or may not donate to the Reform Party?
Well, it's the thing is, $100 million would turn it from a two-party electorate to a three, which helps constitutionally.
It would, it would allow Reform to do
more choice,
to do things. Yeah, they would expand geographically. I mean, they're already getting local constituency offices and around the country, which they didn't have before. But if you had that kind of money, one of the big important things in trying to win an election is data, right? You need to know which areas of the country, which people think certain things on certain issues and where they are susceptible to vote for you. And you can only do that by owning, you know, incredibly complex databases of information, and they cost a lot of money to buy. So that's one of the things.
Here's the thing, is what I wanted to say, the main point, is that Elon Musk, although he wouldn't be directly involved in it apart from donations, is that he's pretty good throughout his companies, the companies he buys or he starts, of not employing dead wood.
Yeah. Oh, no, he's... I mean, he's an obviously incredibly successful businessman with a kind of curious brain, exactly the sort of brain you want, that looks at things from a different part of the telescope, right?
I'm going to go back a couple of months here because it's never really been mentioned and people sort of thought it a bit weird at the time. But if you remember, when he first took over, which was then Twitter and now X, he was filmed carrying a sink into the headquarters.
Yes, he was,
Twitter. Now, what no one cottoned onto was he was doing that for a reason. And that reason was he was saying to people, I'm getting rid of everything but the kitchen sink. That's what he was... He's not stupid.
He's unconventional and he's stubborn, and that carries with it, you know, a breath of fresh air to some people. It also carries with it some problems as well. And I think the issues around Twitter or X and free speech are really interesting. And Jason, thank you for your call. They're really interesting in the sense that we all agree we don't want to stop free speech. We also all agree that, you know, there is areas of social media that are pretty filthy, and the do whatever you want thing becomes an increasingly difficult argument to retain as things get bigger and as social media prominence and dominance takes even greater hold. You know, we wouldn't, you know, publish in newspapers the kind of things you can publish. And I'm not talking about individuals with hurty words. I'm talking about, you know, videos you might see. You know, you don't stick a decapitation video on the Daily Telegraph website. You're being caught for it. But in social media, all of that, anything goes. It could be pornography, it could be bad language, it could be libel, it could be violent, it could be anything you like. Whack it on there. And so there is a line where anyone, even the greatest supporter of Musk or social media and free speech, would look at and go, that's a little bit iffy, mate. This didn't come with a warning. I didn't wake up. I was reading tweets from Angela Rayner this morning in order to do my job. And then before I know it, I'm watching a bloke have his head blown off. How the hell does that work? Listen, we have hit the clock, as the phrase goes. Before we do, Chris says the faster you go over a pothole, the less severe it is as you skip over it, considering that councils don't care for our safety as they aren't repairing them. Maybe they should just remove all speed limits. They should also be held accountable for all damage, as currently it's extremely difficult to claim for pothole damage. Yeah, indeed. They sort of argue, well, it's kind of your fault. Not our fault, Governor. Well, you're in charge of the roads, you numpties. Jeremy Kyle is here.
Happy Christmas in your grey shirt.
Happy Christmas. Happy Christmas. Nearly there. A week to go.
Are you excited? Are you done? Are you organised?
I love Christmas.
What do you love about it?
I don't, you know, it's everything. It's trees.
Kids are excited, are they?
Excited kids. It's trees. It's carols. It's the cooking. It's the family.
Do you cook?
Yeah,
do you?
I go.
Such a liar, man.
You should see me with Miss Patchula.
Really?
Yes.
Well, my ex-wife, my current wife says that you're soon to be ex-wife. The word's good. My current wife says you're very good with the spatula.
She likes me Maggi Mix.
Does she?
Apparently so, yeah.
She loves your big ladle. It could go on forever. We're in panto. Oh, no, we're not.
Yes.
Me and Ina's a couple of
rolling pin to die for.
There's so much to talk about. I mean, we got into this waspy women conversation yesterday. I didn't even know what waspy was, but women against... I don't know what it stands for, do you?
Women against pensions being taken away.
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, you just come to the Starmer thing and you think, because you're some plank of the year, and you go, hold on a second, you have already upset farmers, pensioners, Brexiteers, Waspy women?
Yes.
This is about 30 million people, you deranged idiot.
Yes.
But my
It's only
favourite
been
story of the
there
day,
half an hour.
the horrible BBC is under pressure to play a Christmas #1 contender parodying Sir Keir Starmer and his winter fuel cuts. The track by Sir Starmer and the Granny Harmers, which mocks Labour's decision to strip millions of pensioners of the benefit, is topping music downloads with a week to go before Christmas. We've got to get that to Christmas #1.
Wow, we've got to do that. I mean, it's happened before. You know, when I appeared on Top of the Pops.
Did you go? What were you as?
When I was on TalkSport, do you remember we did a World Cup song? And it went up the charts.
You were on Top of the Pops?
So, because we got to #2, I think we were kept off the charts by Britney Spears. Because we got to #2, the BBC had no choice but to invite us down there.
That's amazing.
To be on it.
Who was the DJ?
No, we recorded it outside, you know, in that
weren't allowed in,
thing, because there were so many of us.
Yes.
Hawksby and Jacobs and the whole team, and there was a couple of Page 3 girls thrown in.
Did you get your face on? Did you like that?
Oh, I was there. Top of the Pops, loved it. So
who's the DJ?
I don't know. I think they inserted that slot in to the thing. I can't remember who was...
I mean, how long ago was this? We're not talking Savile or anything like that. We're talking much younger. No, just checking. On that
not even Dave Lee Travis.
Dave.
Not even the Harry Cornflake.
Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Dave Lee Travis. Yes. Anyway, moving on.
Might have been Pat Sharp, I don't know.
Oh, Pat Sharp and the Funhouse.
I love Pat. He's great.
Is he a mate of yours?
I know Pat a bit, yeah.
Do you? You know all the big stars,
He's all right,
you?
yeah.
I wish I could tell you my greatest ever story. Maybe I will. As a DJ starting out, I got the big gig when I was in BR&B to go to London, to Capital, and interview the Spice Girls. It's when Spice World was out, and I arrived to a room full of DJs. They all had producers. I'd fallen asleep, I dribbled on my jumper. The woman comes in, she says, Kyle, you're first. I go in, the 5 Spice Girls are there. What I didn't know is they got into Steve Penk's studio 10 minutes before and announced they were in Leicester Square, so people are hoarding into Leicester Square. I walk in, Pat Sharp's behind the glass, Dr. Fox, Chris Tarrant, Diddy David Hamilton. This is royalty. I'm shaking like a dog. I can't think of what to say. I've not seen the film. I go, listen, Spice World is great. Lots of people are playing parts of themselves.